open the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First order of business is to elevate Chris from alternate to full member for this meeting, as Steve is not here. Second item on our agenda, first item on our agenda, is 70 Washington Avenue, continuation of public hearing for proposed new residential home on existing lots. Valerie, you have a...
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think with this particular application, I think there's still one out. I mean, I'll turn it over to Anthony to talk about his review on the engineering, but in terms of planning, we don't have any other comments at this point, and it really deals with the final decision from the applicant, whether they want to move forward with the plans as submitted. There was a letter that came in today from the fire department indicating that they would be open to having the hydrant moved to a different location. And if that's the case, that would require an amendment to the subdivision. And so the applicant can choose whether they want to pursue that or not.
Yeah, in terms of engineering, we all of our comments had been addressed with the exception of the hydrant question, which Valerie just outlined. So if they do want to move the hydrant location, they'll just have to amend the plan and the site plan to do that, or move forward with the application as it is.
Is that clear about
Or
what your
choice
options are, how you want to proceed?
Yeah, or choice 3. I have a choice 3, if I might impose upon your. My name's Whitney Singleton from Singleton, Davis & Singleton, attorney for the applicant. As you might have seen from my correspondence, my client's been in this process for some time. We tried to address the issues that are identified by the town and now agreed to by the Viola and the fire department, that this water main and hydrant are unnecessary. And there's actually a hydrant closer to the house it's seeking to serve on the street behind it, which I provided to the building department and council, showing that there's actually one. People didn't look at it on another street, didn't have to come from Washington. So yes, it would save a significant amount of money not having to build an 8-inch water line and a hydrant and everything else. But there's a lot of issues, quite frankly, problems with the subdivision plat. I've discussed those with Dan and Valerie in a meeting a year and a half ago, and they said, well, that's the plat says what the plat says. The problem is the plat has a lot of inconsistencies in it, including specifically that lot owners are required to do work on other lot owners' properties without necessarily having permission. And then other people have been allocated the cost of making those improvements. And so there's a financial disincentive for there to be cooperation amongst the parties. We tried to work with the owner of lot number 1 to come up with a plan so that we could come in with an amended site plan a year ago. But when it got into what are we bringing the application for, who pays for what, who pays the consultants, it kind of disintegrated. So I think now that some of the issues, I watched your last planning board meeting online, and you also identified some other problems with the plat, and you asked that your staff, who has apparently done so, provide you with correspondence from the fire department that they don't want this. So I think there's a solution that addresses both concerns. My client wants to move forward with starting to do work on the site, and he can't do so unless he's compliant with your resolution and compliant with the subdivision plat. So what he'd like to do is have an approval this evening so that he can commence site work. And in the interim, have the owners of the 3 lots come back with a joint application to make modifications to the approved subdivision, both the resolution and the filed plat. I don't know that that necessarily needs to be in the form of a newly filed plat. You can file documents, index them against each of the affected properties, the 3 properties, and make a notation that's indexed against the filed plat. So there could be a resolution of approval from your board modifying certain aspects of the subdivision approval number 28201. We would have a public hearing. We would have a resolution from your board. But in lieu of having that in the form of an amended filed map, we could simply record a document that says, by planning board resolution number such and such of hopefully February of 2025 or March of 2025, the following conditions or aspects of that plat are hereby modified. And list, lot number 2 does not have to be demolished. Lot number 1 does not have to have an 8-inch water main. And whatever those modifications to the subdivision resolution are, would be incorporated in that document, signed by all 3 parties, and filed in the county clerk's office, indexed against the properties. That's what I would like to see happen. And what I've done is, if you don't mind me handing this out.
Yeah, give it to Dan,
So he can start.
give it to Valerie.
Maybe you can share.
We'll share. Won't we?
Okay. Yeah, I think they would go ahead with the plat as written, as completed, and then they could file it. They can always go back and file an amended plat later. I'm not sure about this.
So kind of in the spirit of.
But basically, it sounds like what you want to do is go ahead with the existing subdivision
Correct.
and then come back and either file an amended subdivision or this vehicle that you just discussed.
Right.
But for tonight, we're prepared to go ahead, Valerie, correct me if I'm wrong, we're prepared to go ahead and make, with a resolution to approve your project with the existing plat. And if you
Okay.
want to go back and adjust it later, that's your right.
And that's fine. And all I'm saying, if you take a look at the language, all it says is that we would be subject in the future to any modifications, deletions, or additions that your planning board may make in the future. It would be incumbent upon us to bring the application.
Yeah, I can
Dan,
correct
are
it,
you-
but I think that's your right anytime.
No, I realize it, but I also don't want you to approve a subdivision plat and then have somebody, undermine it. This way, it at least
Well, the
anticipates.
plat is approved. You're only going to be able to build based on the existing subdivision
Understood.
until you make these changes.
Yeah, but you also know, like, by the time you do the public notices and mailings to the neighbors and public, have the public hearing, and it could take some time, so.
Well,
my
that's
point-
the risk you take. I mean, if you have the house all built or mostly built, and this process is still 6 months down the road or a year down the road, you're going to
Yeah.
have to work with the existing, in order to get a
Oh,
CFO, you're going to have to finish the project based on the existing plat.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's a very poorly drafted subdivision
I've
plat
never
and
seen one
resolution.
before.
Okay. It's, it is what it is. Nobody,
Okay. Well, this is a public hearing. I move that we open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this application? Please come and tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is Dwight Weld. I'm the owner of Lot 2. Just seeking clarification as to kind of what the actual definitive next steps are. The developers will come back to us and the owners of Lot 1, because my utilities are all tied in.
Yeah, I watched the last meeting, I'm aware of it. I don't think we need to take the planning board's time with that. It's
Okay.
really a private matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
I suggest if you do have those concerns, you go to the building department with them. They're going to be intimately involved with getting them going. Anyone else? Christina, anybody online? Okay, I move that we close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Wait, before you close, I'm a little concerned about the language.
Okay.
So is the board,
Do you feel like we need to add this?
no, well, yeah, I'm concerned about adding this.
No, I don't see that we need to. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, no, I agree. Was it determined that we would not add this?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary.
Oh, okay,
But
good,
They
good.
have, and
Yeah,
correct me
yeah,
if I'm
yeah.
wrong, but they have the right to come back and But
Right,
trust
no,
me,
I was concerned about saying that the resolution is subject to issues that we don't even know about
no,
in the
let's-
future, and
let's-
that's what this would open the door for.
Okay.
But if you're going to approve the project as shown on the existing plat, meaning the entire water line and the hydrant, that's fine.
You know, but they can start the process tomorrow
Right.
to
Exactly.
Change it,
change the subdivision
Yep.
and
Yep.
clean that up.
and if they're successful, they can, they're not, they're
Okay.
stuck.
Any other concerns? Okay, I move that we close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Valerie, do we have a resolution?
Yes, we do. So whereas the applicant is seeking site plan approval to construct a new one-family resident, the property is located at 17 Washington Avenue. Whereas the planning board conducted a duly noticed public hearing on November 7th, 2024, and it was concluded on January 9th, 2025, during which time all those wishing to be heard were given the opportunity to be heard and provide written comments. Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board hereby finds that a proper case exists for requiring a park being suitably located for playground or other recreational purposes within the village, and the planning board finds in accordance with section 300-52J, reservation of parkland, that a park cannot be suitably located on the property requiring a payment of a fee in accordance with the master fee schedule for one additional residential unit if said fee was not collected as part of the original subdivision. And be it further resolved, the planning board of the village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. The approved plans, and it specifically refers to the last revisions, November 21st, 2024. The architectural plans last revised July 16th, 2024. The other conditions specifically deal with, before the final site plan can be signed, that the applicant receives all governmental approvals, approving agencies without material deviations from the approved plans. The applicant must address to the full satisfaction of the village engineer all outstanding stormwater and stormwater maintenance agreements. That the village's landscaping consultant shall review and approve the final landscaping plans. The applicant must meet the replacement of 50% of the total aggregate diameter of proposed trees for removal. If not, they must pay for the fee in lieu of. All easements and conditions of the 2008 filed subdivision map must be shown on the site plan, and the applicant shall pay for all outstanding consultant review, legal fees, and connections with this application. There are some, and then finally, conditions, a couple other new additions for issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Those conditions include that all conditions of the 2008 filed map, subdivision map must be met, the recreation fee must be paid, and that is it.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Can I ask for clarification on one item? When you reference a property, I don't know whether you misspoke or it's mistyped. You said 17 Washington.
No, 70 Washington
Okay.
Avenue.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Valerie, we have an AHRB resolution?
Yes, we do have an AHRB resolution. Give me 1 second, sorry. All right, so whereas the applicant is seeking AHRB approval, the property is located at 70 Washington Avenue. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for architectural and historic review approval is granted, and it specifically refers to the same plans as I mentioned before, dealing with November 21st, 2024, and architectural plans last revised July 16th, 2024.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
The second item on our agenda this evening is 33 Ogden Place West. Do you have somebody to present that project?
everyone. My name is Kasper Tokarski. I'm the owner at 33 Ogden. As per last board meeting, we were asked to, I believe, only add a window to the exterior elevation, which was updated. The plans were submitted. I do have a drive with proposed rendering showing that window. And I believe that was as much as was changed as far as the exterior appearance of the building. I have been exchanging emails with Mr. Olivieri. There is still items pending as far as the site plan, and there was actually, I guess, 10 or 15 point items that we need to clarify, which we are working on, and we'll be getting back to Mr. Olivieri once they're resolved. But as far as, I guess, the exterior elevation of the building, nothing is going to change based on those comments.
Okay, Anthony, is there anything in that list that we can't make conditional?
No, I don't have a problem with it being conditional. We could deal with it for building permit issuance. It's fine by me.
Valerie, any open items with you?
No.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I move that we open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this application? Anyone online? Okay, I move that we close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Valerie, do we have resolutions?
Yes, whereas the applicant is seeking site plan approval to construct an addition, the property is located at 33 Ogden Place. Whereas the planning board conducted a duly noticed public hearing on January 9th, and it was concluded on January 9th, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board of the village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for site plan approval is granted subject to the following conditions. And the approved plans specifically refer to the last revisions dated October 17th, 2024. And then the conditions specifically note the applicant must meet to the full satisfaction of the village engineer, all of their all the outstanding comments. It also specifically refers to the making sure the tree replacement meets the 50% replacement in kind requirements. If not, they have to pay a fee in lieu of. And that all proposed lighting must comply with section 300-41 of the zoning chapter.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And AHRB?
Yeah, so whereas the applicant is seeking AHRB approval to construct an addition, and the application is located at 33 Ogden Place. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for AHRB approval is granted, subject to the following conditions, and then this specifically refers to the AHRB plans last dated August 2nd, 2024.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, good luck with your project.
Thank you for putting that window in.
Yeah, I
Thank you for putting
Really
that window
appreciate
in.
that
It looks
window.
really,
Alan
really nice.
Hale window. It's a beauty.
All right, that's takes care of our public meetings. We're on to our pre-submission conference items. The next item is the Knoll. I'd like to remind everyone, this is still pre-submission. We will not be taking comments from the public this evening. You'll get your chance. But we are reading all your letters. Feel free to keep sending them. Anything new, we're absolutely happy to read and consider as part of this process.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz here representing Hillside Street and the site plan applications otherwise referred to as the Knoll. I'm joined by our development team. Unfortunately, Mr. Cortese, our client, had a close family member pass away. He's at a wake this evening, so he could not join. He did not want us to adjourn this evening, so we are all here. We appeared before you in December. At that time, we indicated that we would respond to an extensive letter that we had received from Mr. Shriver, counsel for a number of the neighbors. We did do that. We submitted an extensive response on December 24th. We also indicated that we would provide information to your village council concerning some title issues. We did provide a letter from Benchmark Title. We had a follow-up conversation with Mr. Posen and Ms. Dixon. There's some additional things that they have requested, and we will be providing those to them. We also, I think yesterday, received a comment memo from Mr. Olivieri regarding some engineering issues. We believe that those engineering issues are technical in nature, absolutely appropriate and warrant a response. However, neither the Olivieri memo nor the supplemental information that we're going to be providing to Mr. Posen and Ms. Dixon should preclude your board at this time from scheduling and conducting a public hearing. So we're here tonight, Mr. Chairman. We made our presentation last time. Dan Collins is here if you have questions on some of the technical aspects that he went through. We have no need or desire for the record to make a further affirmative presentation tonight. We did that last month. We would like, however, to get past the pre-submission context and conduct the public hearing. So we're here respectfully asking that the board schedule and conduct a public hearing as you deem appropriate at the earliest possible date.
So, Dan, is that the process you're in the middle of working out with them? That's good. Did they know what their action items are?
They know, yes.
Okay.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, and Anthony, you're in the same position. You're working through their technical issues, and everyone,
Yeah.
they just got your memo, right? So you
Yeah,
haven't
we
had a
received
chance
the
to
memo
respond.
earlier.
Yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. And Valerie, I gather we're going to dive into secret at this point.
Yes. Tonight, I'd like to talk a little bit about seeker. Last month, you circulated a notice of intent to be lead agency. We did send out those notices. We did not receive any responses back, so therefore means that tonight you can declare yourself lead agency for this, for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. What I'd like to do tonight is to go through, the applicant has provided an expanded environmental assessment form, Part 1, and I provided this board a Part 2, which basically identifies potential project impacts. And I wanted to go through each one of the environmental topic areas with this board. And then based upon our discussions, we can identify additional information that we want from the applicant in order to be able to get this board to either a conclusion that that particular environmental impact based upon the actual project itself, that there would be no significant adverse impact, or the alternative is that ultimately one or more than one of the environmental impacts would create a significant adverse impact that would require a positive declaration, which would require EIS process, right? So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through the board through each of the different environmental impacts tonight. I'll give you my sense of my recommendations or suggestions, and then this board can provide additional input as to whether you want to see additional information, whether you disagree with, my assessment, and whether you want to consider something a little bit more of, instead of a no or small impact, to a more moderate or larger impact, and would like to see more information on that.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, all right, so, and as we go through the Part 2, I am going to refer back to the Part 1. So if there's any information in the Part 1 that this board feels that you want to see adjusted, we can raise that at that point in time as well. So the first is in the Part 2, and I provided that as part of your packets. It's called an impact on land. And the impact on land really focuses on the proposed action, whether it involves construction or physical alteration of land surfaces of the proposed site. And with this, just to kind of refresh the public's, the public's memory as well as the board's memory, that the proposed action is the construction of the roadway, 2 homes, the stormwater improvements on lots 147, 151, 152, and 153. So with that, because the proposed action is looking to do construction and physical alteration of land surfaces, I checked yes off of that. And then when you start looking at the individual topics that usually help you kind of come to conclusion as to whether additional information is needed, one of the first things deals with whether there is going to be, the proposed action may involve construction on land where there's depth to water tables less than 3 feet. This particular question was left blank on the EAF, so I think this is something where the applicant might want to provide a little bit more information in terms of the EAF Part 1, and whether if there is a high water table, what the impacts would be for that. The other item in this also involves whether the proposed action may involve construction on steep slopes of 15% or greater. That I identified as potential moderate to large impacts, because we do know that there are steep slopes in that area, and that is something I think that has been a concern from the public and also from this board. So I think additional information as to how they plan to deal with the steep slopes, and then also in terms of, and then Anthony can weigh in as well, but in terms of, erosion and sediment control, stormwater, and the overall impacts in terms of the construction of the roadway, which we do know that does involve some steep slopes, as well as some of the homes. The other item is the proposed action may involve the excavation and removal of more than 1,000 tons of natural material. The applicant is proposing 1,364 cubic yards removed, which is over 1,000 tons. So that I identified as a potential moderate to large impact. So this is something else that I think would be helpful for the applicant to provide us as part of a Part 3, an expanded EAF, as to additional information on that. And then again, go ahead.
Can I interrupt just
Sure.
for clarification? Those numbers mean nothing to me, because it's.
Yes.
So what is is there some, when you say it's moderate to whatever impact
Yes.
the move is on, is there some industry standard benchmarking?
Sure. So I do have that information too. So technically, the New York State DEC has identifies moderate impact as these are impacts that are moderate in magnitude and that have more impact on environmental resources. Moderate impacts can occur when the impact affects a larger part of the parcel or even extending to a small area just beyond the parcel. Moderate environmental impacts may either be isolated only in one location or of regional concern, and they generally are longer lasting in duration, measured in weeks or several months, and are often reversible and can be more readily addressed through mitigation measures or project changes. So large impacts are ones that cannot be, they're typically irreversible, challenging to mitigate, of wide regional scale, or of longer duration.
But there's no benchmarking.
There
to
is no
this-
benchmark. It's
This
just
particular
more.
amount of stone.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, I think that's a valid concern, that the one we were just discussing. I mean, that's going to involve a lot of trucks.
Right. And so, and because of that, I think that's something that the applicant might want to consider, providing more information on the construction impacts associated with this particular project in terms of truck trips as well as construction phasing. The other item is the proposed action may involve construction that continues for more than 1 year or multiple phases. Right now, the applicant has identified this as only occurring in like one phase. Now, I don't know if, I think maybe one or two people from the planning board have concerns with that being identified as only one phase as opposed to multiple phases. So I'll leave, I'm going to open that up if you want to have additional discussions on that. But that particular thing, because it's right now they're identifying it as one phase, I'm identifying that as a smaller impact because of the fact that it will eventually terminate. The other deals with the whether physical disturbance of vegetation removal is going to occur, and I did identify that as a moderate to large impact. We do know there will be tree removal. So again, more information on I know they provided a landscaping plan, but how they plan to either try to do some sort of mitigation or restoration of the of the landscape area, as well as, potential plantings, whether some of those plantings are native. Just additional information is that they really looked into this to try to help restore some of the habitats that might be lost. So that is the items that I identified as potentially additional information dealing with land, and I'll open that up to the planning board if there's any other additional information you think might be helpful in terms of looking at the land impacts.
So you want to go through, you're going to go through one of these, we're going to comment,
Yes,
you're going to
then
go
we'll
through
go
the
to the
next.
next
Okay. So I have a kind of a, because I'm asking that because I have a kind of a global comment. Which
Sure.
which we've been discussing, which is the degree to which the impacts should consider additional development beyond just the two houses that you are constructing. And I understand that you're only applying for the two houses, and that's the kind of the narrow lens that you're taking. But I guess I'm wondering, to what extent are you all willing, since future development seems likely, or even if it's not likely, there's this potential for future development enabled by the road and access that have been created. I'm curious, not just for this, but it'll come up with some of the other impacts. To what extent are you all willing to consider impacts from additional development up there beyond just the two houses that are being proposed?
So my initial reaction to the question, Mr. Lane, is that we're certainly happy to put some narrative in the expanded Part 3, and let me take a step back, and the issues that Valerie's raised already are things that we have no objection to providing additional information. And given the fact that this is basically the construction of a portion of a road and site plan approval for 4 houses on lots that were already approved and are valid and subsisting on a subdivision plat, we can do that in a supplemental expanded Part 3. In terms of asking us to study impacts on property that my client doesn't own, control, and there has been absolutely no indication is proposed to be developed, I think may go afoul of SECRA's mandate. That it's, as both Dan and Valerie can tell you, SECRA is governed by a rule of reason. We are supposed to administer the SECRA regulations and the environmental conservation law with that umbrella. So I don't know whether you could ask us to study the balance of the road and the lots that have been there for 100 years beyond my clients, any more than you could ask us hypothetically to begin studying other property in the village for which there is no land use application. SECRA does tell us, and the handbook absolutely tells you, that the next person in clearly, if somebody were to come in now and start to develop or propose a development on the lots behind us, SECRA tells us that that developer has to study their development and ours. They layer on top of us because then they are the next one in the pipeline. So to me, your question, while I understand it, feels like you're inverting what the law actually expects of us. If you were able to tell me specifically, David, we'd love your client to comment on such and such, and I'm sure your consultants will share that, we'll take that under advisement and we'll try to answer it. But to ask us and to ask my client to hypothetically study lots beyond his for which there is no indication of an application, I think is an unreasonable request.
Well, I guess we're going to go through some of the other sections, and we'll see. If there are some, I may continue to ask you.
Totally fine,
And then
and maybe
you
it'll
may
become-
continue to say, I'm not doing it. But I guess I feel like it doesn't seem unreasonable to imagine that in terms of phasing, for example, that there will likely be more phases to this than just the ones that are being presented.
Let's just stay there for a moment. Phasing, totally appropriate question by Valerie. We will answer phasing as to something we control. You can't ask my team to try to answer the phasing of somebody else's property and how they would seek to develop it. So you gave me a perfect example right there of why
Why the answer is no.
why the answer's,
Okay.
it's just not a fair question, and I'm glad we're talking about it,
but it
because I
could-
want to understand what's motivating the question.
Right, yeah. So but what about for the other two properties that you own?
We're studying, we were asked by your team, and we modified our application, Mr. Lane, to include all of it. So at the urging of your professionals,
So the EAF is covering
all
four.
all four lots and the construction of the road. And footnote, the bulk of the impact associated with the project, my client's project, in my opinion, is the construction of the road. So everyone behind us gets the benefit of the road, the fire department work that we've already done, the infrastructure that we would be putting in, the retaining walls. So while I object to the studying of lots beyond us, the infrastructure to get to those lots, we're dealing with.
And David, can you just make sure, or maybe one of the consultants are there, does the excavation assume all four homes, like the excavation that they submitted? Okay.
Yes, the answer is
Okay.
yes.
Perfect, thank you. As well as the physical disturbance of all four? Okay.
So I'm sorry, did the application actually increase to 4 homes?
No, 4 sites that are being
Yeah.
worked.
But the EAF,
Yeah.
their
Okay.
environmental
EAF has to
assessment is
include
gonna take in all 4 homes.
But I want to make,
sites that are
Mr.
being
Chairman, I
worked.
want to make sure you're clear, absolutely clear, and Dan, I want to, he looked down your way and you were looking down. So the application changed back in December, or was it even before that? I think our October submission, we had already modified it at the request of staff to include all 4 lots, 151, 152, 153, 147, and the road. 5 separate site plan applications, we were told by Dan and Dan, that's what we had to submit. We modified our submission,
Right,
modified our
but
fees.
2 of them were just for the stormwater management and the, so you're talking about 4 structures now?
We are
No.
studying site plan approval for 4 lots. Whether we build the structures, we are, the essence is preparing the lots for potential development. This is a subdivision.
But maybe I'm getting ahead of
Two
myself.
two
Maybe
of the
you should
lots
keep
have
going.
generic house footprints.
Right.
Right, each of them has a
That's the-
hypothetical footprint,
Right,
as,
2 are
as requested by staff.
Right, 2 we're actually looking at, and 2 you
Just to
have a
show they're
hypothetical.
buildable, the lot with the stormwater
Right.
infrastructure and the lot with the turnaround.
For
So-
secret purposes, we're giving you all 4 lots.
I understand and I appreciate that, but your application is just for 2 structures at this time?
So there may be some terminology there. At the moment, we haven't applied for structures, because we don't do that until we actually file a building permit application.
Right, they mean but they're going to be seeking AHRB approval for 2 homes.
Different question,
Yes.
that's correct.
Sorry. Okay,
Got
but
it.
that's it, we're talking about 2 homes?
Yes. All right, so then are we good with the impacts on land? Can I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next is the impact on geological features. Now, I just want to explain this again for the public and everything. So this usually refers to the proposed action may result in modifications or destruction or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site. And the unusual landforms refer to section 2E in your part 1, section E-2-G in part 1, which specifically looks at whether the state identifies any particular unique geological features of the project site. So this particular project does not have any, like there's no designation of unique geological landforms. So therefore, with this particular environmental topic area, I checked no. So that one is not something that there would be potential like impact on. So I'm not saying that there's no change to any like rock on that property. It's just specifically something that's of unique geological
And
value.
there again, I assume you don't have to read it, I assume there's some description of what a unique geological feature.
Well, so, yeah, so like in the EAF Part 2, it specifically says you're supposed to identify that specific landform. And usually, like, let's say, for example, the Palisades Parkway, right? That's a unique geological landform. That's something that it's even protected, right? So there might be something like that, or if there were specific dunes or bluffs or something. In this particular case, there is nothing like that being identified. The next environmental topic area is impacts on surface water. So this specifically deals whether the proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies. And this specifically really refers to on the project site itself. This particular project does not have any floodplains, it does not have any wetlands, and it does not have any water bodies like in terms of ponds or lakes. So that I also checked no for. That does not necessarily mean that the applicant doesn't have to require for like stormwater runoff or anything like that. That absolutely is something that's going to be looked at, and Anthony's looking at it very carefully in terms of having to submit like stormwater pollution prevention.
Yeah, we want to be very careful about that.
So the next topic is impact on groundwater. Now this says specifically, does the proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater? Because this, or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. Typically for a single family home, the answer to introduce contaminants to groundwater aquifers is no. But for this particular situation, they are introducing a new additional use of groundwater because they're proposing wells.
No, but that just disappeared, right?
We eliminated the well.
You eliminated the wells?
Yeah, yeah.
Fire department's required.
Yeah,
Okay.
Anthony put that in his memo
Then we
yesterday.
can check that as no.
Thank you.
Okay. So then the next is impacts on flooding. And again, this is not associated with, I'm not talking about stormwater, this is really dealing with development in your floodplains. If you look at, it specifically says the proposed action may result in the development on lands subject to flooding. So it specifically says whether the project sites in the, will result in development in a designated floodway or development within a 100-year floodplain or 500-year floodplain, or it's gonna require modification of existing drainage patterns. So this is really dealing with major infrastructure changes and also development within floodplains. So I checked no for that. But again, I just wanna make sure the public understands that is not dealing with the stormwater aspects. That is something that absolutely has to take place.
Just a quick question regarding that.
Sure.
You know, it's the top of the hill, so you wouldn't think it'd be an issue. However, we've had a home on Beachdale here that turned out was in a depression and ended up with 4 feet of water in their ground floor. And they were also at the top of the hill, so different hill, but, you know, you would never think it would flood. So are we sure that there's no depression up there or anything that might be an issue?
Nothing that we've seen, but during the process, I
Can we
appreciate
just-
the cautionary remarks, and we will certainly.
It was very
confirm.
expensive to remedy that.
We
so
will
it'd be
compare
nice
and
to-
contrast to that other location
Right.
to make sure we're not experiencing that
And
depression.
maybe when the applicant provides it's the expanded, like, part 3, you can discuss a little bit about what you're planning to do for, in terms of stormwater and your stormwater measures.
Absolutely, yeah. We have not, where do we stand on a SWIP? We've submitted a,
We have a full, it's basically a full slip that I prepared already.
yeah, but we'll make sure that the expanded Part 3 dovetails into the SWIP, but we've
Right,
submitted a SWIP
right,
already.
yeah, absolutely, because that would be helpful for the public to also understand.
That's fine.
But this section is dealing with, you know, published flood.
Correct.
Right.
Mapped.
Floodplains that are mapped.
We are not in a
And
flood.
there are none on that site.
Yes.
But again, the stormwater runoff issues and things like that are still.
Could you just address it, just take a look and make sure there's nothing there and
I
just?
think I
and
thought
Put
I
it as a
had,
line item in a memo?
absolutely.
Okay,
I thought I had just acknowledged. We will definitely compare and contrast to that other indication that you just shared about the depression. We do not want to find out that we have a similar depression at the top of the knoll. Got it, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so the next is impacts on air. And this specifically deals with whether the proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. And in the environmental assessment form and stuff, it specifically looks at, like, is the particular proposed action going to create more than 1,000 tons a year of carbon dioxide, more than 3.5 tons a year of nitrous oxide, et cetera. And really, this is really pertains to more industrial, commercial, right? So that I checked no for as well.
Okay, just in a related subject,
Sure.
have you guys decided how you're going to heat these homes? Is it going to be heat pumps, or are you going to use natural gas?
Yeah, I don't think that that has been determined yet, and if my client decided that, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, he's not here. We will answer that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, so the next is impacts on plants and animals. I'm going to talk to you about how I answered this particular section, but then I'll open it up to you, because I'm sure the board might have some additional information you might be requesting because of the tree removal. So this particular thing specifically says the proposed action may result in the loss of flora or fauna. And it refers back to section E2, M through Q of the part 1. So this is really where, in a lot of times, if potentially there's threatened or endangered habitats or specific species on site, those would be designated then, and then you would start identifying whether it's going to be a small or moderate to large impact. In this particular application, this particular site does not have any specifically endangered or threatened habitats or endangered or threatened species. So at this point in time, this particular application would have a no in terms of impacts on plants and animals, specifically focusing on threatened or endangered. But
How is that decided? Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
But I was going to say, but in terms of landscaping, restoration, and other like tree removal, that's up to I'll open this up to the board for if there's any other concerns that you have that you'd like the applicant to address.
Okay.
Right, because this, I mean, this, again, David, is like another case where, like when you say that Valerie gives our assessment about the flora and fauna on the site, when you say the site in that context, what do you mean?
So I mean the actual site of which they're proposing to disturb.
Right.
Their project site.
So to me, like, this is one of those questions that I don't like know how you can answer it without considering the sort of the larger environment of not just the hill, but also what's in the During estate, to try to understand to what extent you may or may not be impacting the various critters that are moving in that area and moving back and forth between people's backyards and there, or between the During estate and there, and so on. I mean, not be any, I don't know. I'm just saying, that's one where, like, it seems very funny to me to, like, wait at the edge of your development and see if a box turtle crosses it or not. It doesn't, to me, that doesn't make sense.
Sure. So permit us the opportunity, when we do the expanded Part 3, to see if we can address your concern. I hear the question. We're very well aware of the During estate being right there, and the need to be sensitive, and I think that's the goal of our client and of our team. So I hear the critter question.
Okay.
Right, and the applicant could provide additional information as to what they're proposing to do in terms of restoration and landscaping and tree replacement that might go towards helping with identifying, potential habitat restoration.
Okay.
So the next topic is impact or agricultural resources. I think there's clearly no agricultural resources on this site, and so that also was a no. The next one is impact on aesthetic resources. So the land use, and this one says, the land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource. So in this particular case, while this refers to E.1 A.B. In the Part 1, and really associated with that is the aesthetic resource is your During estate, right, which is closely nearby there. And we recognize while it's a lot of single-family developments, this is a wooded area that is going to be developed. So this I did check, yes. And specifically, I did put moderate to large impact associated with that the proposed action may be visible from an officially designated federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource, so that's the Jurana Estate. I also identified potential moderate to large impact dealing with elimination of significant screening or one of more officially designated scenic views. And then I also noted that from potentially publicly accessible vantage points. So my recommendation for this particular environmental topic is to ask the applicant to do like a visual impact analysis from the Jurana Estate, and then also maybe some of the, and you can, and this, I'll open this up to the board, from like maybe a public roadway or something, so that they can show or demonstrate that maybe their landscaping plan or whatever is providing some visual screening, or really what the impact is. So I'm going to kind of open up to the board.
No
for
objection to
discussion.
that. That makes complete sense, and it's an appropriate request.
And do you want to identify any particular, besides Jurana Estate, any particular roadways or public viewpoints that you would like the applicant to specifically focus on?
I guess the answer is probably yes, although I think what we probably need to do is go up there and,
Okay.
Well, when we did the site visit, we
Yeah.
walked those,
We did.
the adjacent roadways, and I do think that, you know, looking up the hill from both sides, we'd like to know, you know, what the visual impact's gonna be. Certainly the people across the street of the adjacent road are gonna be looking out the front of their house.
Understood.
It'd be nice if the
Maybe.
visual impact was,
but I guess what we need to do is either give you a set of points of view or something, like what's the most useful?
Well, typically-
from which we would like it taken.
Typically, we do receive, as Valerie and others may know, the location from which to perform that study. My sense is going to the top of what is a mapped road, the Knoll, where it intersects the Jurana Estate, is an appropriate location. And I think several of us all walked that together when we walked all the way up and then veered off to the left on that trail. So I would envision having our team make sure we do a study point from up there, looking back toward the development area, and as the chair indicated, from Briary, looking in. Both of those are legitimate study points.
So we'll give you a couple, is it okay?
That's fine, that's fine.
Right, we'll give you some ideas about it.
All right, so why don't I'll circle back, and why don't you individually send me some viewpoints?
A diagram or something,
Yes.
okay.
Then the other one is impact on historic and archaeological resources. The EAF Part 1 did note that there is potentially an archaeologically sensitive area for this particular site. So I did check yes, and I did note that consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office is probably required as part of the environmental review.
Just to find out if there are any,
Right, and if for some reason they want, sometimes they'll ask for like a phase one associated, you know, so that would be something that the applicant should look into. The other was impact on open space and recreation, and again, I just want to explain, this is really focused on if this particular is considered like designated open space or recreation, like public recreation. And so this says the proposed action may result in loss of recreational opportunities or reduction of an open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. The Village of Dobbs Ferry does not have an adopted municipal open space plan. And typically, an open space plan will identify sites that are for recreation, capital improvements, or specifically identified for purchase. Or is currently being used as a designated park or recreation area. So for that, I checked no, but I understand that that is, you know, it is right now open space. So it is something that maybe the applicant can provide some additional information as to how that they're planning to, the development that they're proposing will continue that open space characteristic of the area. I mean, and I'll let this board discuss that a little bit more.
right, I mean, Valerie and I have discussed this a little bit. So, you know, because I'm sure you're familiar with it, on the detailed map for that neighborhood, there are several mid-block areas that were colored green. They were not officially designated open space, I understand that. We didn't purchase that space or do anything on top of it. But to me, it is important to acknowledge that that document, the intent of that was that there should be serious consideration for the fact that there are these, and it wasn't just that one, there was another adjacent block on that map where there's a significant green mid-block area that's part of the open space character of the area. So while it has no official legal, I guess, designation, maybe we should have, don't have to get into like what we might or might not have done. But I think it's important to acknowledge that the intent at the time was that that be seriously considered as open space. So I think maybe the way Valerie put it is correct, that I think even though there's no official adopted open space plan that designates that as open space, to be kept as open space in perpetuity, I think it would be good for you all to acknowledge the fact that it was identified as part of the character of that neighborhood, and that your development needs to sort of respond to its sense of open space that is in that location.
That's fine. Look, I don't want to argue the point unnecessarily. We know the Juring estate is there. We know that people may have perceived this area as open space. It's private property owned by private
Understood.
individuals, so it
Yeah.
technically is not open space, as Valerie's already indicated.
Right.
The one thing that I learned by walking the site with all of you, the Juring estate is this incredible resource, and you really can't get there too easily through this particular section. We saw it was not well traversed. As we went beyond the subject lots, those of us who were there were, at that point, I know I can picture it, we were climbing over
Right.
trees. So allow us to take a look at this and actually determine how, in some way, this may allow for some additional community benefit and use of access to the Juring estate and to the trail network that we ultimately found ourselves on.
Anyone is allowed to use anyone can walk up. The status of the road, once it's built, I've forgotten, does it get dedicated
So
back to the village?
It's the answer to that is I don't think the village is looking to accept dedication of this road, and that would require everybody who owns a piece of it to offer it. So the short answer, Mr. Lane, is I don't think it's going to be a public road. We would have absolutely no objection to the easement that's going to have to be created in terms of maintenance of that road to provide for a public pedestrian trailway, which is not unusual. So to me, while folks may now technically be trespassing through that area, I think this can facilitate access to a wonderful resource. So allow us to look at that, allow us to address that in the expanded Part 3.
Okay.
All right, so the next one is impacts on critical environmental area. So this I checked yes, because that's the Juring estate. There's two specific items underneath that. One is the proposed action may result in a reduction in the quantity of the resource or characteristic in which the basis for designation of the CEA. I said no to that because it is not going to reduce the quantity of the resource. But in terms of quality, I did say that there potentially could be a small impact, and I think it very much deals with that visual impact analysis that you'll be looking at.
And we've already said we would do.
Right. The next environmental topic is impacts on transportation. So this specifically says the proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. And typically with something this small, I would probably say, no, there's going to be very little impact, but I know that this is of major concern to the public. So I did say yes, while I did say that the other items below that, which deals with proposed traffic increase may exceed capacity, I had no small proposed action may result in the construction of paved parking areas for 500 or more vehicles, no. Proposed action may degrade existing transit access, no. So like, the thing is, the environmental kind of thresholds they identify for larger, moderate to large impacts, it does not exceed that, but it might be helpful for the applicant to do just a very quick impact, traffic analysis, just to say what the impact would be for those particular,
So traffic is included under the heading of transportation?
it is.
Okay.
And one of the things that I thought would also be helpful would be the construction, which I think they're gonna provide some additional information, but just in terms of, and then the site distance has been a concern for people with, like, they were concerned about pedestrians, so they could just maybe do a little bit of the site distance from the roadway.
Yeah, I think, once the project's done, we're looking at functionally a shared driveway for two houses. But during construction, there's going to be a lot of material removal. We need to know where trucks are going to get staged, those kind of things, because that's a whole different ballgame.
Understood. I think that goes back to earlier, the phasing. So there needs to be a section in the expanded Part 3 area on how it gets built, vehicular movement, truck movement, that's fine.
And in keeping with my earlier question, I'm curious whether or not since, again, we don't know, but it may well be that there are additional houses that will be built on the road by whoever extends it. And as you point out, they'll have to do their own impact statement to determine it. But are you willing to, in terms of the design and the capacity of the road, to represent that it's going to be designed in such a way that it could accommodate the additional houses that might be built on the properties, including the ones that you don't own, and what that impact might be?
I want to think that through completely before I fully commit, but that sounds like a fair question that we can answer, and frankly, it's probably also an internal question for the village in terms of your fire department, whether the fire department's comfortable. They reviewed this already, they made some suggestions, and we're following what they asked us to do. So it sounds like we should be able to answer hypothetically, could other people traverse this? Understanding, and I think Anthony and Valerie would agree, maybe not, we see this in lots of other situations where we're proposing new subdivision, new development, something that isn't otherwise on a plat. The next person in can always expand the roadway. So what you kind of refer to as the driveway, or what the chair might have called kind of a driveway to 2 or 4 houses, if the next hypothetical person uphill sought to develop, I know as a matter of law, they have to study that which is in front of them, and theoretically, they could make that driveway wider. We have been told by the fire department, we were able to actually make it narrower, as we explained last time. So it can be built wider. We initially looked at it, and we were asked to not do that. I hope that kind of answers your question, Mr. Lane.
Do you know, like, whether or not the roadway, the way it's being designed now, would be able to manage the traffic impacts
Another
of the
4 or
rest
5 houses?
of the, well, or even the best of the, like, the build-out of the knoll?
I think that's another 4 or 5 houses, but Dana, do you have any?
I couldn't comment on that.
We heard the
Yes.
question.
It might make people feel better if you could answer it, whether you're
Got it.
legally obligated to or not.
Understood. Appreciate the question, and let us take a look at that. We obviously, Mr. Lane, we clearly have to talk to a traffic engineer to respond to the portion of the transportation section that does require a traffic engineer. We don't have a traffic engineer here this evening, so we'll come back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next is impact on energy. I think, Alan, you already asked the question about the energy that's gonna, again, I think everything is, to a larger extent, no to small impact in terms of, like, again, this is assuming like a much more larger scale.
Yeah, I don't see
type
any of these
development.
criteria.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I did note that it technically would increase the use of any form of energy.
I don't know, I think you can probably make that a no.
Okay. Then the impact on noise, odor, and light, again, this is not necessarily associated with the construction. They're going to provide information on that, but this is just as once the proposed action is built. And just to note, like, I know that they're, like, in terms of outdoor lighting, this is something that during site plan review, and, you know, their village does have regulations specifically dealing with lighting, so light wouldn't be able to
Dark
necessarily.
skies.
Right,
And
exactly.
all that, yes. Now, is there another area that deals with rock removal? Or would this be it?
So, no,
did that already, right?
in terms of rock removal, that would be more of like impact on land, and that was where we were talking about additional excavation. So are you concerned with something like blasting or?
Yeah, but have you talked about how you're gonna remove the rock yet, whether it's gonna be chipped or blasted?
So that was one of the first questions that Valerie identified at the beginning of the meeting about the removal over 1,000 tons at 1,300 tons, if I heard her correctly.
Right.
So we're going to have to answer that and give you a full description of how that gets removed and the vehicular movement associated with it.
Okay, one of the things that we've done here before is requests that if there's gonna be a lot of rock removed, that adjacent properties, somebody goes in and documents the foundation.
We got that in Anthony's memo at 3:30 yesterday afternoon.
Okay, so you're way ahead of me, I like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, yes.
For the record, I think that was posted on Monday, but
Okay,
I sent it to Dan.
Ah. Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so the next is human health. I mean, this deals with like if you were gonna do more industrial type of situation. Consistency with community plans. So this one specifically says it's almost like a double negative. It's like the proposed action is not consistent with the adopted land use plans. So I checked no to that, saying that it more or less is consistent with the adopted land use plans in terms of the fact that it is compliant to zoning, and it is a single family, and, you know, it is approved subdivision. So again, I'll leave that to this board if you have any
That was
comments on that.
another
Yes,
point of discussion, Valerie,
Yes.
between you and me. I think it seems a little bit weird to say that the proposed action is not impacted by existing plans. It's true, there's nothing to do with zoning, but I think it's the vision plan, pretty well, you know, it does go to the trouble of highlighting some of these larger mid-block areas as green. It doesn't necessarily, it only, as Valerie said, it says that they're part of the open space character of the place. It doesn't specifically say that the village should, what the village should do to follow up on that. But I think it didn't strike me as fair to say that somehow the site is not captured by some document that transmits an intent. I think, having been there at the time that the plan was put together, that was clearly an intent. Maybe you know, as I said, there was no follow-up necessarily to what that meant. But I think you can't just say that it's not somehow represented in the planning documents, because I think it is, and I think the intent was that, not necessarily that, I don't think it says nothing should ever be built there. It's not very clear about what should happen there, but it does say that it's not just another leftover open space. Otherwise, because we only colored on those various neighborhood maps we created across the village, we put that green symbol on open spaces that we felt had some kind of special status. So I don't know what that means necessarily in terms of the burden on you. I just think that EAF should acknowledge that was identified as an important.
So let me take a crack at seeing if I can sort of meet you in some.
Please go ahead.
Nothing I said was.
I thought it was
hear
something
that.
I said, actually.
Hear that.
So let me see if I can try to meet you halfway on that. I think in terms of the community character stuff that we're going to add to a Part 3 and to the visual, we're probably going to end up hitting the issues that you want to see some discussion about. I don't want my comment to kind of blush past, to the extent that people may have thought it was open space, I think that was possibly misguided. To the extent that those on the committees may have thought that the village had properly demapped the road, we've been there already. I'd be remiss, Mr. Lane, if I didn't say, for the benefit of the record, the village has concluded that was not correct. So, I wish Dan Posen was sitting there, I wish I was sitting there when you all had that discussion, and maybe somebody would have said, you all may not be right about this mid-lot, whatever you're referring to, the mid, what was your phrase? Mid.
I just call it the mid-block.
The
this
mid-block,
this
the mid-block.
area.
So I get it. So to the extent that you and others worked on a plan and had some intent and expectation, I hear it. I don't want to ignore it, but I want to make sure that as a matter of law and process, it's not open space. To the extent that people may have been operating mistakenly, that's not really Mr. Cortese's fault.
Yeah.
But we will address your concerns in this expanded EAF, and I think the visual and the community character that Valerie's telling us we got to hit, we're going to hit it.
Yeah, I'm not arguing the point of law.
I got it.
Because I'm not a lawyer. But I just, some acknowledgement in that, that there was a reason that that green blob was put on the map.
I get it.
and
Right or wrong, the blob is there.
I'm not sure it was wrong. I think maybe what was wrong was, well, I don't want to, I'll shut up.
Understood.
What
I will too.
Yeah.
Well, the vision plan did not, that part of the vision plan did not get made into
Turned into
the zoning code.
or a resolution
And
that
I don't believe the
village-
vision plan has, legal power. It's a guidance document. So that's our problem here. So it was well-meaning, and it's very helpful to have that information. It doesn't help us right now. Now, Valerie, 17-G, and this kind of supports Rob's previous
Yeah.
position. The proposed action may induce secondary development impacts, residential and commercial development not
Right, so
included.
that is typically, and I mean, I'll just say from my perspective, that this is typically something like that is, so this is already an approved subdivision, and the road is already identified on the subdivision plat. I mean, if you go to the tax maps, it's there on the plat. So the road itself, or the development of the road itself, isn't necessarily going to induce, it would be, let's just say you had like farmland or green field, and you were going to now do a subdivision, right? That new road could potentially induce maybe another property over, like, let's say beyond that particular property, to now have access that didn't have access before. At this point in time, from my perspective, that the roadway it's well, I'm saying roadway, but it's really like a private drive, that the applicant has every ability to develop that private drive. So that's why I did not identify that, but, again,
Yeah,
that's just my perspective.
What's the wording again of the EAF?
The proposed action may induce secondary development impacts.
And
So example, residential, commercial development not included in the proposed action.
so tell me again how this is not,
Because the subdivision is there, right? The roadway has already been mapped. It's just now it's ready to come for development. And the reason normally this particular application would be a type 2, just to do 2 single-family homes. But because this particular application is including installing stormwater infrastructure on a 3rd lot that's associated with 2 other lots, right? And then they're also going to have additional easements in terms of access because of the way the roadway design is, that it raises it up to like an unlisted action, right? It adds more complexity to the overall project. So it's not really inducing anything. It's, basically it's providing they're developing the access they already are entitled to. So, I mean, again, if you want to say yes, I mean, we can change that and the applicant can talk about, the fact that they can provide some more information on the history of that subdivision and what's already there in the subdivision plat.
That would be the way we would answer that question if we were asked to answer it. I appreciate Valerie's candor and accuracy. If the Juring estate was not the Juring estate, it was just vacant property out there, that would be an area where I think we would, she's nodding, that we would agree there could be growth-inducing aspects of building the knoll because it opens up potential future development. In this instance, nothing that isn't already approved as a lot on a plat gets opened up for potential. These lots are already potentially developable.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and the Juring estate is, preserved land. All right, so that concludes,
What about, well, I guess
Oh.
consistency with the community
Right, we
character is
just had
not,
that. We had, right, so the consistency with community character, I think, again, according to the, when you go back to the EAF, is specifically referring to whether, the first components are dealing with whether the additional 2 homes are gonna have, an additional demand for additional community services, like an expansion to your facilities, that type of thing. And so the answer to that is gonna be, no.
these lots are the same size as the adjacent streets.
Right, and having a few additional people within your community is not necessarily gonna require additional ambulance services or that type of thing. But in terms of then also dealing with architectural scale and character, again, they're proposing single-family homes in a single-family district. So that's why those aspects I checked no for. But in terms of the open space characteristic that we were talking about later on, I think the applicant is going to provide additional information on it. And if this board wants to change anything, we can easily, this is just a draft and for discussion.
So
Okay.
just to be clear on this, on the sort of the bigger issue about the potential now probably, I think you'd agree, increased potential that there'll be more development up in the knoll. We don't know that, but seems likely. I guess, well, I'm not sure what I was gonna, where I was going exactly.
Well, while you're thinking about that, so what are the next steps regarding this?
So if this, I can revise this and we can repost it, right? So if the board feels comfortable with this and what we outlined today, then the applicant is going to go back and provide what we're calling an expanded part 3, which looks at all the environmental topic areas that we identified needing additional information. And then once they provide that information, this board will review it again, and then we'll have additional discussions as to whether there's a
We're
significant,
satisfied.
yeah, where we are.
I'm sorry, my brain came back online. The process for going forward now, in terms of, can you just, again, kind of explain what the steps?
Right, so before, there's going to be a part 3, which basically the applicant needs to, or lead agency needs to take a look at all the items that we identified as potentially moderate to large impacts, do a deeper dive. The applicant's going to provide us that information, which is typical, and then we will, your engineer, myself, Dan, everybody will review that information, you'll review that information, there might be a little bit of back and forth. Part of this is also working into any of these potential impacts into the overall project, so that the project itself, basically helps alleviate any significant adverse impact associated with this development.
Okay, so you're going to update this part 2, and you're going to get it to the applicant.
Yes, I mean,
And then they're
the
gonna
applicant has
respond
also
to
been
it.
taking notes, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And just to clarify, even though the impacts are maybe somewhat narrow, or narrowed to the proposal, the next person who comes in, decides they're gonna build the next 5 houses, they have to go through this same process, right? It's now the burden is on them to assess the same set of impacts. Like, as each person comes in, if the concern is what happens after build-out? Let's say all 13 lots get built out. Presumably, on an incremental basis, as people come in to do this, they have to produce the traffic studies, the stormwater, all the same things that you're producing here. Subsequent applicants have to also.
If they're going to extend the road and they're going to build houses on lots that are on that plat, they're going to have to do the exact same thing unless you tell them they don't. So the only thing you said that I just want to be technically precise on,
Yeah.
you would have to probably go through part 2 again and determine whether, for some reason, some of the answers we gave tonight are different for some of the other lots. For example, as they get closer to the Juring estate, does it have different implications? Or, I'll tell you, I think there are different visual impacts for the lots at the very end rather than the lots at the elbow where we are. So I'm just trying to provide that as an example. But the short answer from the applicant standpoint is, I think you've made it abundantly clear in your record that if anybody were to do a future application, they're going to have to go through the process that your village professionals are making this applicant go through. So we would ask respectfully that, because I think you started it earlier, and I'm just want to remind you, and I think Valerie would agree, I think you didn't actually declare yourselves lead agency. There was a discussion about how you had noticed and designated your intent. So tonight, we would ask you to declare yourselves lead agency, and procedurally, there is nothing in the discussion tonight on the EAF that should or would preclude you from opening a public hearing and allowing the public to participate.
Are you going to address the conservation easements, existing conservation easements? My apologies.
Can you,
I don't know that I can respond to that unless.
we do have a legal team here that's looking into that. If you want to send us another letter about that or remind us. I mean, I know we've seen issues regarding it. It's being addressed. Do you feel that from you're asking us to schedule a public hearing. Do you feel like you're going to be able to address all these issues by the next meeting?
So the answer is, I'm not sure we have to. I don't think seeker requires that, and I'll defer to your professionals. I don't think we have to have a finalized, expanded Part 3 to open the public hearing. There's an argument, and I'm not here to argue for the neighbors, but I'm here to make sure the process is intact correctly. To the extent that there are an awful lot of people who I'm very mindful have concerns, they ought to be articulated in a proper fashion so that if you decide we do need to respond to that, we respond to it as part of that long EAF. Regardless of the outcome of this matter, I think Mr. Posen and I share the fact that we want the record to be correct and accurate and thorough, and that's my job here. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not looking forward to the public hearing any more than you are, but it does have to be done, and I think we are at a moment in time where it would be appropriate. And my client has respectfully suggested that we ask you tonight to schedule that public hearing.
I hear you.
How do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be also helpful if the applicant hears, I'm sure the applicant has received all the written comments, but hears from the public
Right.
as well. And if there are any other environmental
Right.
things that come up, then they can do that at that point.
Okay.
But ultimately, before any decision is made, like, the public hearing will remain open until, like, seeker has to be completed before the public hearing can be.
Okay. Anthony, what about you? And I know you just got Anthony's memo. Have you had a chance to read it?
We had a chance to read it. That's how I knew that we were no longer doing the wells and that we had to do a pre-blast survey. So yes, we read it. Yes, we literally discussed it early evening yesterday, and we will respond. There was nothing in that memo that we felt precluded us from asking for a public hearing, and I raised that with Mr. Posen earlier today because I wanted him to know I was going to come to the microphone and ask you to consider scheduling the public hearing. So that we know we need to respond to. Is that something that we're able to do in the next? Oh, you have a very unusual, rapid submission date behind, if I heard that correctly. Yes. So,
So, I mean, I think that we need Anthony to have time to look at your responses before the next meeting. So that's if we're gonna have a public hearing.
well,
That's
he's
my
not.
feeling on it,
the-
so.
So I think that the next Wednesday is probably for the new submissions. The resubmissions are 10 days before the
Okay,
meeting.
then the answer is yes, we will have that. Yes, we will meet the submission deadline, and I'm sure your submission deadline correlates to the amount of time he's supposed to have to review it.
Okay, and Dan?
I think the sooner you get the public comments on the record, the better.
So there's nothing in your queue that's gonna make that a bad idea?
No, and the information they provide will be maybe molded by the comments further. So,
Good.
The one thing we want to talk about is, do we want to have a separate public hearing specifically for this? Because you might have a very long agenda that night, or whether you want to have
Like
it all together at
dedicated,
the same.
scheduled at the regular planning board meeting time, or you mean a supplemental, like a
Right, so
supplemental
whether you
hearing
have it
just on
scheduled
this?
at the regular planning board meeting, or whether you have a separate date specifically for this.
Could we just do it earlier?
You could if
Do
you
it at
want
6
to.
o'clock instead of
If-
7 o'clock?
We
And
could do whenever you want. We could even-
Although we don't know how, it may take, there's time, how much time is,
we don't have to figure that out right now, do we?
Well, you do if you're calling for a public hearing.
Oh, can't we have a few days to, we just have to publish it as the agenda, don't we?
no, I think you ought to, if you're going to have a public hearing, you should adopt something today indicating that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Members of the board, do you have,
no, I think we should do it, for sure.
no, but do we
I
do?
just don't know, like, if it makes sense to, I think probably anticipating the number of comments that we're gonna have, the format probably would be to get all of the comments, and then right, we're not gonna go back and forth.
Yeah, that's not,
That will take forever and not be productive. So
nor
I'm
is that
assuming-
required or appropriate.
So I'm assuming we'll hear from everybody, and then we'll turn to you, and you'll have your chance to respond to whatever you can. Maybe some things you won't be able to respond to instantly, and so on. Is that right? That would be the format?
That sounds appropriate. We don't, again, we'll see how this unfolds. We don't normally respond on the record at the meeting.
Okay.
We may respond in writing and as Dan said, shape and revise some things.
Okay.
I would just encourage the board to, in your own fashion, appropriately acknowledge that there has been a tremendous amount of information that's already been presented to the board in council letters and emails. So you all will conduct it the way you choose to conduct it to avoid redundancy.
Right.
One of the things we can do is have public comment, specifically have a time for each person to speak. And that's something that you can, just so that affords everybody the opportunity to speak.
You mean a
And
time
then-
limit?
Yeah,
Yes.
and so therefore, I mean, clearly, people have recognized that they can submit written stuff as well. But that would be something that you would also want to set tonight. We can say, like, it's gonna be 2 minutes per person, that type of thing, so that way, and everybody has that allotted time.
Okay, how do you guys feel about, either coming in early or just trying to make it work during the normal period? Does anybody have any
I
feelings
like the
about
idea
that?
of,
Doesn't secret require a separate public hearing?
No, it does not.
Thank you.
Not unless it's a DEIS.
this question's how
I
much,
think it would be fair to the other applicants that are gonna be on
yeah, waiting.
the public
Let's
hearing
do it last.
to put this last and start the meeting at maybe 6.
And maybe we start the meeting at 6, try to
Get the other
try to get
applications
through with all the projects.
and then
all the other
hopefully
stuff,
by
and then-
7:30.
Start this, and then that can go, if it,
Okay,
we're not as time constrained.
okay. Can you make it a 6 o'clock meeting? Okay, you guys are good?
Mhm.
Everybody else?
All good.
Okay, so I move that we call for a public hearing at our next meeting, which is, anybody have a date?
February 6th.
February 6th. And do I have a second? All in favor? Okay, and we're
Dan
gonna,
Posen, do they have to set a time if it's gonna be later?
Right, if it's different, we'll say, we'll
Notice that it's.
amend that to include starting at 6 o'clock,
okay, so we're gonna start the regular meeting at 6 o'clock.
correct?
We're gonna put this item as the last item,
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to state that, but yeah,
okay?
I think it makes sense.
And
Well,
we are
good
going
for The
to,
other applicants, no.
we are gonna limit comments to 3 minutes per person. Okay?
Lead agency?
Oh, yes. Do I just make a motion? I move that we become lead agency for this environmental, the secret process. Do I have a second? All in favor? Will that work? Okay.
Thank you all, thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all next month.
February 6th.
Yeah, well,
Oh, that's right.
My store
You
closes,
get to go home early. Oh, that's right, I'm
my
sorry.
store closes at 6.
Ah. Just come when you can. I'm sorry.
So I'll try and find somebody to cover me.
I'm definitely out of my comfort zone with this whole subject. Ah. You know, interesting enough, guys, you know, you can set a drop dead time for these meetings too. You can say whatever's not done by 10:30 or whatever, just stop.
You're thinking of instituting that?
No, I didn't bring it up, so I won't be able to, so, you know, we've gone to 12:30 before, let's hope we don't.
Everybody,
This is a
All
special,
right, can every,
conversation outside, we still have.
this is a special,
we have more work to do, folks, can you, exit quickly, please?
this is a special case. Huh?
simple.
They don't know that I don't know that I.
I don't know what you were saying that they approved.
Just that they wanted them to acknowledge, just to say, the site is not. It doesn't, there's an revision. It's true, very specific. But it's there.
Right. All right, would you mind closing, oh, there it goes, thank you.
So, okay?
It was perfect. Are you okay with me? All forgiven? Did I behave myself?
All right, the next item on the agenda is 94 Ashford Avenue, continuation and pre-submission conference for referral from Board of Trustees for proposed change of property line, alteration of driveway and parking lot, and a new 3-story building.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Leonard Brandis from Brandis Architects, here representing a proposal for 94 Ashford Avenue. I don't know how much I need to reiterate. It's been a little bit delayed getting our surveyors out there to create the plat plans that you needed and the descriptions of the new lots, and also having him going out there and staking out the property. I don't know if anybody knows that we have it all staked out, including the building corners are staked out as well.
Well, thank you, I'll
I know that
swing
would be
by.
good for us to take a walk through. If you want to do that, I'd be glad to meet with you and do a walk through the property.
Do we feel like we,
Have to call a special meeting.
We have to notice it.
Yeah,
Walk.
we have to know.
If we do it
do
together.
we, if we want to do it together,
If you want to do it together, if not,
do we feel like we want to do this together?
As long as there aren't 3. As long as it's just 1 or 2.
Yeah, no, as long as it's 2 or less, right? We
Right.
don't have a quorum issue, right?
I'm fine on my own.
I feel like it's not that complicated a project. We
would
could,
the owner have any objection to?
No, the owner would not have any objections to people walking. I mean, it is vacant. There are some twigs and trees, so everybody has to be careful, obviously. But it's not that steep of a property that we're worried about somebody slipping and falling that much, so.
we do have some
And
experience.
it was a bit of a parking lot at one point. It was leveled out at some point.
So the footprint is staked out, you said?
Footprint is staked out as well, yes.
Okay, I can do that.
So I know one of the requests that you had also is that you wanted us to show you the properties around it in terms of relationship on the sites. We had the photographs before showing the other houses that are around there, and also the historic house, the gatehouse that's been there since the 1850s. And that is, once again, the reason why we're here is that we want to create something that's similar to the gatehouse in terms of feel of it. We're not building a gatehouse, but we are building a 3-story apartment building with only 14 units, of which 9 would be 2 bedrooms, 5 would be 1 bedrooms. The required parking is 20 spaces, which we are providing underground, underneath the building, so we are providing all the parking that's required as well. Let's go to the plan with the, well, the site plan in terms of setbacks that we do have requirements that we did note it on the plans originally, that we have it on our schedules. The setback requirements that we are requiring zoning variances if this is going to continue through. We do have the back setback that is required. That is with the one issue that we would have with this, which is really, it goes to the side yard. We're going to show you the other properties next to around it. We have that as well put up. That information we were asked about. We got the letter 2 days ago, so we did do whatever we could to create something. I know it's not in your folder at this time.
Hey, John, could you go out there and ask them to move somewhere else? Thanks.
Where Greg can do it.
That's what I want to say.
Get out there. Get out there, tell them,
Good luck.
shut up.
It's an angry crowd. We did do a building analysis of the site, going through the streets, going through all the plot plans that we were able to get to the tax maps and surveys that were available, and we're showing our building in comparison with the other buildings on the street there, going from the corner of Ashford up to the neighboring buildings in front and behind. Let's go to the names of the properties. Yeah. Okay, in terms of the properties that we do have, we have the AFP 29 Corporation, which is majority of the space that's surrounding us. That's all the space that's literally surrounding us, neighboring us, where they have their buildings already built on the right. Across the street, the Beacon Hill Apartments. There are a couple of other commercial, the 20 Beacon Hill LLC, mostly medical facilities, and 88 Ashford. There's also, just facilities there. So we're surrounded by buildings that are already built up properties. So, and we don't know if there's going to be additional buildings. I don't believe so for 29 Corporation, which already has all the apartment buildings, and that's just their main entry building over there. So we feel that we're far away from the other building, that using that as a side yard as opposed to a rear yard, although it is considered a rear yard, but we're working it through that way. So we do request that request because it's side yard. We have a lot of distance between the two buildings that we're suggesting for the project itself and where the existing buildings are. And I think right now there was questions about the stormwater management, and that we have Daniel Collins here from Hudson Engineering to discuss his plans. If you want to bring that in.
I guess I could just jump on.
Valerie, is this the project that requires variances? And
Yeah,
the zoning board wanted us to give it a hard look before they brought it to them?
Exactly.
Right, the two variances required are for the rear yard setback and also for the height of the building. The height of the building itself meets code in terms of the flat roof, which is at 35 feet, which does meet code. We're only allowed additional 3 feet for a parapet wall. We're having ours a little taller because we're looking to create something that matches more the existing structure that's on the site. And that's why we're going up higher with that one. In addition, we also planning solar collectors on the roof, which go up more than 3 feet high in the ground. And this way, we would be, hiding and concealing all these solar collectors as well. So it's not visible from the streets or anywhere around.
So how much is the variance, the height variance?
The height variance is for 5 foot 4 inches.
Okay.
So, and that's just for the parapet wall. It's not for the building. Building itself is at the 35 feet. That's allowed. And once again, it's the height of the parapet wall where we're using to conceal all the equipment. In terms of the units themselves, they'll all be individually heated and air conditioned using electrical systems, there is high-efficiency heat pumps that'll heat and cool, so each pump has their own. Those units will be on the roof as well, so we're trying to conceal all the equipment so it's not going to be visible.
And what's the other variance?
The rear yard variance. Now, I can bring the building to the front yard, which would be zeros required, but we felt that setting it back a few feet makes it a much more comfortable for the rest of the property in terms of the variances required. We do have an entryway, which is part of that, and so we could eliminate the entry, but I think the building would not look nearly as good or function as well without a proper entry to make this look and feeling the same way as the carriage house that we're working with. And we are keeping the carriage house in the form that it is right now. So we're not changing that, but we are creating a better parking area for, because right now it's very bad parking, so we'll be modifying that. And that will not require any variances for the new lot that we're creating there. And we'll still have 2 parking spaces there.
The carriage house looks like it could use a little love. Is
And
that part of the project?
that will be part of the project, absolutely, because we want it to look nice to match the other one. Materials of the building is what we did show on that. I don't know, well, we can't go back. We'll go back to that later. You want back there? Okay. Let's go back to the site. Let's go back to the, sorry about that, right there. So we are looking to go with stucco and panels and the stone on the base. So there will be stone, stucco, and the roof itself will be using, it's a slate line asphalt shingle roof, which is what they have on the carriage house right now. So we'll be matching that same roof material. Because I know that was another question that had come up. So, and that is an asphalt roof on there right now. And let's go back to engineering.
Good evening, members of the board. Dan Collins, Hudson Engineering. Again, since our last meeting, last time we were here, obviously when we put this together originally, it was a few years ago. So our design was originally just for the 25-year storm. Obviously, things have changed since 2020. So we obviously went through and we've updated things and make it a little bit better for this lot. So now what we're doing is same as before, same in location as the stormwater system, same type system. We're going to capture the runoff from the roof area and the driveway.
Yeah, you saw that big project in Gould Park was, to a large extent, in response to the retaining wall being damaged by water coming down Beacon Hill Drive.
Yes.
So,
So-
stormwater management is a really critical part of this.
Absolutely. So so essentially, we're taking the roof area, and I'll do it down here because I can't see anything over there. The roof area and the driveway area is going to get captured, driveway is going to capture via trench drain and get conveyed back into the building's interior plumbing system, where it's going to be conveyed to a hydrodynamic separator located outside this section of the building here before discharging into an attenuation gallery. Before we were providing, I believe, only 40 feet of 30-inch pipe. This system is sized for the 100-year storm now. So we're providing 70 feet of 36-inch pipe, so we've upped that. We've actually provided a separate outlet control structure to better control the flows and provide a better bypass for any storms that might potentially go above the 100. These controlled flows actually will flow out right now. We're flowing out to Beacon Hill Drive. One of the comments that Anthony had was to potentially bring it around directly to Ashford on this side. I guess one of my questions was, is Ashford, is that a village road now, or is that a county road still?
It's a village road.
So it's a village road, so that makes things easier. So now what we're likely going to propose is bringing this across, running across the property property lines between the properties here, and then bringing it down and probably providing a new catch basin on top of the existing drain inlet here. That keeps it away from the Beacon Hill Drive, gets that volume out of there, because right now I understand that we are taking a good area, even though we're reducing the flows, we're taking a decent-sized area and bringing it in a direction that it's not going now. So to alleviate any issues in Beacon Hill, we're going to bring it around, and that'll obviously be included in our next submission. With that said, we did obviously receive, we put together these plans and we sent them last week. Anthony was nice, kind enough to actually go through everything and provide us with a preliminary memo with some comments. So obviously we'll address those and have those ready for the next meeting. So you'll be able to have hard copies of this or PDFs of this plan at the next meeting.
So should we come, are we,
Yeah, anything,
do you want us to come, are we now?
You can ask
Are you
questions.
done with your presentation?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So, I apologize, because I wasn't here, I guess it was 2 months ago when this was presented the first time. The, I don't have an issue with the overall intensity of the development. I have to say, I do have an issue with the overall massing of the building. And I think and I've been trying to figure out what it is about it that, for me, doesn't work. And part of it is the image on the first sheet. And let me see, let me open up the architectural set on my computer again. On the first sheet, the upper left image, I think this sort of very kind of absolute symmetry of the building makes it look massive to me. You know, I appreciate the attempt to get at some of the detail and pick up on some of the themes of the existing gatehouse, although that's tricky, you know, to have it not look like a kind of funky pastiche. But if you look at the proposed street elevation on sheet SY004, yeah. What you can see is and this is another thing that makes the building, to me, feel like it landed here and is not somehow responding to the site. You have this slope site, and it's true, you take advantage of it to sneak the parking in on the lower side. But if you look at the buildings up the street, like the big attached building you have at the far right-hand side, you're a little bit bigger than that. But the main thing I would point out is that it steps down with the hill. And I feel like your building also should do something like that. I think it should not be just the one high roof line, which makes for a pretty high north elevation up against the gatehouse. I feel like the massing of the building should somehow step in response to the slope, and maybe be asymmetrical. Maybe that kind of centerpiece that you have now shouldn't be dead center. Once you start stepping the massing down, I think the massing could be a little bit more varied and idiosyncratic. I realize that's a hassle for you because it changes. It's going to mean, to some extent, that the floor plans kind of have to change, and there might be internal level changes inside the building, which is harder to do than just having the box the way you've designed it, because it's true you have these bay window things, but it's a pretty boxy, overall, the structure is a pretty big box.
It's a fairly shallow site in terms of depth, which is why we need to go for a variance. We don't have that much space to build and stay within site, in terms of try to make this affordable. This is a difficult site to work on. That's why it's been like this for many, many years. Reorganizing the plan and creating a building in there and making it worth putting all the energy in, it does require a certain amount of at least getting 14 units. We're not adding a lot of units, only 14.
I'm not interested in reducing the density. I'm not interested in reducing the total square footage. I'm interested in changing the massing of the building in a way that looks like it's sort of not this, like the building, it looks sort of, it doesn't, to me, despite using the gatehouse architecture, it doesn't look, you know, the gatehouse is this cute kind of folly. And this looks like it's sort of what it really belongs at, it like the end axis of an alley of trees or a French garden or something. There's something very heavy and pushy for me onto a street that's otherwise pretty modest. And I think that would be mitigated by figuring out a way to do more of a sort of stepped massing which is more in keeping with what you see up and down Beacon Hill, even though the buildings are not fancy buildings and so on, but they do have a certain scale. And I think if you look at that proposed street elevation, it looks pretty different in scale. And I think a lot of it is the symmetry, and a lot of it is the fact that the building doesn't step in any way. With the topography and the roof line is kind of relentless.
Doesn't relate to the gatehouse at all.
Well, it does from picking up, it does in the sense that they tried to play with some of the architectural elements, but it presents its biggest bulk up against the daintiest feature of the context.
Especially from Ashford Avenue, I think you're gonna really see that massing, with the gatehouse, the original gatehouse there, and then the big.
Yeah, I mean, to their
Just
credit, they show, I appreciate the fact that you showed simulations, including one on your first sheet, the upper right one, does show the gatehouse in your development. But I think it looks unresponsive in some ways, in terms of the scale, the feel of the scale of the thing.
Would have loved those type of comments before.
Huh?
I don't know if everybody feels the same way. And we did break up the facade. It's not just a flat facade. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the drawing right now,
Yeah.
that we are breaking it up. That's not just a square box that we are coming in and out. We do have balconies on there. We have a lot of things to create more forms than just a square box, which is basically, if you go up the hill, is what we have.
Yeah, no, the buildings up the street are not, I'm not pointing at those as
I mean,
a
those,
model,
they're low roof and
model for anything, but they, like
And
this,
if I go with the facade on that one, it's just straight across.
yeah, but look at your elevation, it's not,
Well, you're talking about different
it's,
buildings. and
it's
maybe-
lower and not as long.
I think the roof really brings it up too.
Yeah, the buildings across the street, those medical buildings, I mean, the tallest one is 3-story, but the third story is dormers sticking out of a hip roof, so it's substantially large, it feels substantially taller than anything else in the immediate vicinity.
Okay.
And I also agree with Rob that, you've got that cute little gatehouse, and you've got a pretty big wall right next to it. So I think the idea of stepping down the hillside, if it would reduce that contrast.
Okay. Can certainly look.
I realize that's harder to do. I'm
Plus,
an architect.
Can I make it affordable as part of the question, for the builder to put together something? That's part of the
I understand,
issue.
I understand.
Reduce it down and not losing units.
Well, I don't know, you have to
is gonna
make
be
it small,
difficult.
I mean, well, that's because you're a good architect, and you'll figure out how to step it, and,
Well, maybe changing some of the elements to the triangles, maybe by somehow
I
softening
can soften that up a little bit.
the
and
triangles,
reduce
make it
down a
very
little bit. Well, once again, it's going with the gatehouse, that's what.
right.
actually
But the gatehouse, I have to say the gatehouse on the corner, the windows aren't, they're not like that. Oh, unless, are you renovating that to look like that too?
No, we're not changing, there's the gatehouse right there.
Right, so in your model, you have a gatehouse that looks a little different. So you're keeping that gatehouse.
Yes, we're keeping that gatehouse.
So is it possible to maybe integrate some of that kind of character into this building?
well, that's what they're trying to do, I think, with the triangular dormer.
Those
Right.
gables on there, those are doing the same thing. The gable
But that
going
is
into
just
the
like,
roof line.
is that just like a painted thing on there? Or is it an
No,
actual
It's a
window?
three-dimensional, if you go to the right-hand corner again, the three-dimensional, you can see it's a three-dimensional piece as we're trying on the right-hand side. If you look.
Mhm.
We are doing something more similar to what they actually have up there. We're not doing a round window that they have in there, but we are doing, I should have had the round window in the gatehouse on the bottom, but.
So
we
there'll
just have- but we are
actually
doing the
be
decoration.
round windows like the gatehouse,
Right,
not just some
right.
paint.
So that's an actual window instead of the round circle? I'm confused, I'm sorry.
No, we had details up there where we can put a round window in there to match in with the gatehouse more. Certainly could be up in the attic. Well, that's actually not an attic space, it's more of the roof. That would be part inside the parapet wall. We certainly can do something there to create something. And working to get into the parking lot is going to be difficult. You know, if I move the entry over to where the parking area is, that's the lowest area, and we need to get down underneath the building for parking. So certainly shifting the entry to one side or the other, we can probably do something with that. I have to move the entry to the right side if we're looking to create more changes to that detail-wise. Because that is the lowest spot, and it's already steep enough as it. I think it came out to like 12% or
Yeah.
12% grade going down into the garage. And I don't think we really want to go more than that. If I put the garage on the other side, I'd now have to go probably about 25% into the garage. And the section of the building shows that a little bit better, so. I can look at doing some
Maybe you
variations
can-
on the roof line and bring them down, but
Yeah.
it's, you know, we are dealing with a difficult site. Like I said, it's a shallow site. The other buildings are integrated buildings that follow into each other, that have much more depth to them, and they have much more room on them, on the upper levels in the brick buildings. So,
No, I encourage you to keep working on this because, you know, you meet a lot of our positive criteria. You're near mass transit, you're near downtown. We're always looking for more density in those environments, and, you know, you meet a lot of that criteria, so. I'm certainly on your side here as far as getting this done. I just agree with a lot of the other board members' comments.
okay. So I will look at
And we
modifying
were-
the elevation to create more,
Well, I think it's a massing thing. I really would like you to try to figure out a way to step the massing more. And we will, and by the way, when it comes to variances and stuff like that, we've had this with other applications. If there's a better, if you can really do a better design, but in order to do the better design, you need like a variance that's reasonable, you know, this board can support.
well, that's why the Board of Trustees sent us to you to help get support for the variances. That's why we're here. We went to them first, the building department suggested.
Is the
we go
Board
to
of
them first.
Trustees,
No, the ZBA.
the ZBA? The Board of Trustees, I don't think has,
They
they're not-
sent us here. We were told to go to the Board of Trustees first, which we did.
or the zoning board.
No, the Board of
No,
Trustees, and they told us to
BOT.
come here to the
Why?
planning board.
For site plan, no?
Are they, is this,
They're the,
Is this a
they're
zone
deciding.
where the
board.
BOT is actually?
so we're just sending them a
What
recommendation?
zone is it that it requires?
DT, I believe,
Oh, it is DT, you're right.
Okay,
Right, it's a DT zone.
right.
downtown transition, so they're the lead agency on this, so to speak.
Okay.
Right.
I also wonder if the center piece there, and where the entrance is, if that was a little softened or maybe reduced a little bit, it may help with the proportion of the building, just saying, you know, the triangular. If those two elements in the main space were different from the side ones, that might help soften it a little bit, because it seems very, like, pronounced.
Okay.
Just
We
a
can
suggestion.
certainly look at these ideas and options.
Thank
Try
you.
to make this work for you. We certainly want to get this building put together and built.
Mhm.
There are some ways that we can play with this, with the dimensions and the heights and try to create a little bit more. I do feel that most likely on the right-hand side, it's probably going to still be a taller side, but we probably can bring it taller and then bring it down
Right.
on the other side of the building. So I can create some movements, maybe just two sections, one up and one down. But I think I can create that and to satisfy your requests on that. But once again, I know I need to keep the parking where it is because that's the only way I'm going to get into that building on this site and get underneath it for parking.
Okay.
And I do want to have all the parking without having to go for variances on that.
Do you need, it looks the parking access looks very wide. Do you need to, even if
25
you,
feet,
huh?
25 feet wide parking access.
Do you need 2 doors?
I prefer 2 doors, but still at 20 feet, it's a little tight, but we can make that a little small. I don't think that's going to make that much of a difference, but
So I was thinking maybe there's a way, even if you step the building down,
that I
you
think I
could,
might refer to.
you could still get
area,
access.
if that meets in terms of codes, to have a less than 25-foot wide entry going up and down in the building.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, and I don't know that the code dictates that width. I mean, as long as you have enough, you have an in and out lane, as long as you have enough
Right.
width for each lane. Probably narrow that a bit.
Do you need an in and out lane?
I think it's safer that way.
Well, it's,
You don't want cars sitting
One
on
car's coming in and another one coming out.
Back
hill
out.
trying to get in that building.
Yeah, I think it's probably
I think
good to have
it should
that.
be left, because if somebody's coming down that hill and it's 20 foot and somebody's coming out, not gonna matter.
Tight. It's very tight.
Yeah, it is, and it has the island there too.
We don't have a
You
lot of
can't
room.
move over.
I mean,
As I said, we are setting
what's
back
your
from the
ceiling
road.
height in the apartments?
We have, 8-foot ceiling heights, I think? Let me just verify where I am. Blow that up. Yeah, 8-foot ceiling heights. I just want to make sure I wasn't going to say. The first floor, I do have 9'6" ceiling heights on the first floor and 8-foot ceiling heights on the next 2 floors.
But the roof is really a parapet. How much is the roof
Parapet,
adding?
we're at 35, the roof is adding an additional 15 feet.
Yeah, so you see
Height.
that
So we
roof-
can reduce that down, and I can make that work and still maintain some sort of character with the other one. I can certainly reduce that.
if the building's not symmetrical, also, it looks like on the right side of this rendering, you know, you're set back pretty far.
Right, we are trying to get it away from the street, because I don't think it's nice on the street, even though we are allowed to go at 0. I can bring that right up to the
Right, but
road
does it
by
have to
code.
be?
No, I'd like it.
You know, and that would give you more square footage. You know, if you had to, let's say you had to give up an apartment or two on the left side to step down, maybe you could add another apartment or two on the right side if you bring it out towards the street.
Okay, well, we're trying, like I said, I'm trying to create
I don't wanna
more of a
design it for
setback from the street. I understand.
Yes, you do.
No, I'm
I
not.
mean, we don't.
You don't want me
can't go-
designing it for you.
I mean, the code requires only a 0 setback on the front in a DT zone,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's proper for that particular area, because all the buildings are setback, and I think that would be a big mistake for that area.
The parapet on the inside of the roof is how high if you're standing on the flat roof?
That area would probably be about 7 feet high.
All right, so you have 7 feet of like faux roof to kind
Right, that
of
I can bring
make it
down.
look like the carriage house at the corner. Maybe
Mm-hmm. I mean, if
that's
you
adding a
like-
lot of height to the.
If you look at the sight lines from the street and you're trying to put condensing units up there, you know, if they're 5 feet tall, you know, you don't necessarily have to have a 5-foot parapet to block
Right.
the view of
We're
those
doing all the
condensing
solar
units.
collectors are also probably gonna be about 6 feet, the solar collectors themselves, so that's also part of it.
Mhm.
So we are trying to get that. We do want to have that to be used for the building's utilities, you know, the hallways, the garage.
I'm all for solar
We're trying
panels.
to, we're trying to create that. I just don't think it would look good on the facade, on the roof line. It would look very nice to have those panels there. So hiding them inside, I thought was a better way to go.
I don't think all solar panel arrays have to be 6 feet tall.
Well, no, but if we want to get it where we can get shadows, away from the shadow lines and everything else as it goes around. So we're just going to be raising, and it does have to be, you know, you want a certain angle in this case. Usually they're about.
But the lower you bring the parapet, the less of an angle the solar panel has to be at,
Right.
so.
Right.
We're just trying to create one that's standard in terms of the degrees for that. We can get the maximum solar effect, maximum sun on it.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to send them away with at this point? Anybody?
I don't think so.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you
for your
next month.
time. Well, give me a little time on this one.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you might not want to
All
be
right,
here next
thank you
month.
so much.
You might not want to come to the next meeting.
I hope we have to miss that one anyway.
No, no, you would be before
Miss
the,
that one.
no.
I won't.
Okay, the 200 Ashford Avenue has been adjourned until February. 33 Main Street. We have someone to present that.
So this application is also a Board of Trustee referral
Right.
to this board.
And,
Now, we've discussed having a workshop with the Board of Trustees.
Yes, they would
Right.
like to have a workshop, and might I add, it might make sense also if we can have a discussion with 94 Ashford at the same time. It might be worth it.
yeah,
When do we need to notice, how far in advance do we need to notice that meeting?
I think if it's just a public meeting, and then I think it's not that much in advance. I think it's like, what,
It's pretty short, I think.
yeah. I think it's like I feel like 72 hours.
Yeah, I
think
was going to
it's-
say 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, really, that short,
Yeah.
okay.
I think you'll be taking action, right? at a meeting like that. You're just.
No, we're just
reviewing,
gonna
yeah, so,
try and
yeah.
reach some consensus.
And is that
So Greg-
during their meeting? Is that?
So Greg, the reason,
Well, we don't know yet.
Well, the question, the one thing that you might want to think about is, you could do it at the next meeting. The problem is that might take up a big chunk of time too.
No, next meeting is already
Right.
full.
Okay.
We're already starting early because of that
Yeah.
workload. We could do it before one of their meetings,
That's what I was thinking.
as long as it's not before 6:30, right?
Actually, their meetings start at 6:30.
They do.
For their workshops, but they could have it
Their
at
workshop.
7. I can.
Oh, well, that's fine. Just Laura doesn't close
Right.
until
Six.
6,
So
so
I
he
can-
needs time to get down here.
Let me talk to, well, John can talk to Rob, or we can talk and see if we can get it on like a board meeting agenda.
On the next agenda,
I think the 28th might be kind of packed, but
Okay.
we could see. If not, yeah, maybe the 20th, maybe at the end of the month, they might be able to.
All right.
well,
See what you can, put together and
for
let us
both you
know.
want it, right? Ashford and,
Yeah.
Yes.
94 and 33.
so Greg,
I'm sorry, is that gonna be a public hearing?
It's going to be a workshop with the Board of Trustees,
With the
because
public.
they're the final, because it's in the DT zone, they actually have final approval.
The only reason I'm mentioning that, I'm planning to fix the president go up. I've got over 500 farms of pre-approval on, but whenever this comes up,
It-
it's gonna,
Okay, well, it's,
so make sure you make.
yeah, the Board of Trustees is going to have a public hearing, and it'll be noticed. This is just to try and come up with the best project,
Is there any way for us
Hello?
to communicate some of our questions to you?
Oh, yeah, please
Yeah.
write us.
Okay, I
So-
would love to.
yeah, you can, yeah, you
and
should absolutely,
CC the board too, because they're the ultimate decision maker,
yeah, yeah,
Just questions that we have.
the Board of Trustees.
yeah.
You should have everybody write a letter.
By 94 was ever.
One we're just looking at, the big one, no, the big one at the end of Beacon Hill.
Why aren't the paper streets?
So Greg, the reason we're telling you this, because, no, you should go through your presentation, but you can probably keep it somewhat brief, because we're gonna do a joint, I think it'll save you and everybody else time.
Okay.
Do a joint session with the planning board and the board of trustees, so everybody's comments are, so you don't end up bouncing back and forth
Okay.
between the board of trustees and us.
What comments?
Just a few.
There you go. Okay,
So-
I agree. Sure. I will keep this brief. I know it's been a long day, but I like to talk too.
We're going to try and do this workshop as soon as we can, so
Right.
you don't start doing additional work on this, and then
No problem.
comments come in after you've
Yeah.
done 3.
I just received the comments from the town, and they seem fairly reasonable, so I was going to address those. I don't think that in any way affects, the overall project. I think, I obviously want to run through the presentation very quickly.
Yes, please.
And I think the point of what my client is trying to get, obviously, is an approval, but my client is also wanting to, obviously, there's extensive engineering, there's extensive things that are involved with this project. It's a complicated site. I know everyone kind of says that, but this truly is a complicated site due to the fact that it steps down the hill. And so we obviously need special engineers, we need geotech, we need various things that are maybe sort of like, okay, is it possible to receive somewhat of an initial indication or somewhat of an initial sort of like saying, okay, we're in agreement about the project, and then boom, we could go ahead and fill in all the blanks about the, technical engineering side.
I think
Okay.
that's what it's gonna be.
That's
So-
the goal of this workshop meeting, is
Okay.
to get everybody on the same page, so you don't have to do things 3 times.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so hi, my name is Greg Sharp. I'm a local architect here. I'm representing Dobbs View Realty. I believe that the owners are online. We initially presented to the village board, and I think the village response seemed favorable. We are creating a new multifamily apartment building located on a prime downtown lot near the train station. Our goal is to create a carefully designed, energy-efficient, affordable, market-rate housing building that will be a benefit to the community. The general building program is for 16 units and 1 commercial space and providing 15 off-street parking spaces, bike parking, EV chargers, maintaining 4 spaces on the street. I'd like to now just walk you through the actual proposal and the drawings. So this is a view from Main Street, kind of indicating the architecture that we're proposing for this project. Utilizing brick and stone and steel panels, keeping somewhat of a traditional modern loft aesthetic, something of an industrial type of aesthetic that sort of goes along with the town's architecture. So, let's see. This is a view just showing it from the other way. This shows kind of where we're talking about the main entrance to the apartments. This is a view from Palisade Street. This is just sort of looking over the back of the community center. You could see the building sort of poking through the back there. And this is a view of the back of the building that you would see from the train station. So as you exited the train station, you would get this view of the back of the building.
One of our concerns is certainly going to be that the steepness of the site, if you have, we're always concerned that if you have 3 or 4 stories on Main Street, what's it going to be? 7 or 8 stories on the back. It's going to be exactly.
We do address that. I mean, and that's part of the conversation we want to have today. I think we've already had some internal discussions with some of our neighbors to discuss some of that, just in ways to sort of mitigate that a little bit. Some of the original proposals, which is really before my time working on this, we're trying to have it so you can have access through the back of the property. And in doing that, we would able to sort of like just utilize to actually have more floors of usable space. And so that would be great, or to have the parking at a lower level. But at this time, we cannot, do that. So at this time, we're sort of like, we have to sort of use what we have. And this is the project that we have and would like to go forward with. So let me just, so this is just some zoning showing some of the neighborhood context. This just shows some of the adjacent buildings and some of the neighboring buildings on Main Street. The property slopes about 30 inches from the highest point down to the lowest point, and that sort of dictates how we're sort of organizing the property and how we're kind of organizing the project. Having the residential entrance on the right side, between the two masses, there's sort of a service door, like a service corridor that's coming out, and then we have a commercial space on the left, and then we have our parking access on the left side that will go down a ramp to parking in the rear, and that will also create a view corridor to the river as well. So, and creating a little bit of space between ourselves and the adjacent building. The site is a fairly steep site. This is just a site plan view, just showing the overall project and the site. I think it's probably a little bit easier to see if we just go through it floor by floor. So let me just start on the first floor, and then I'll go back down to the parking floor. So the first floor has a lobby entrance to the right side with some mailboxes. Then there's a service corridor that goes between the residential entrance and the commercial space that's on the left side of this. And then there are some units off to the back and off to a corridor. We have an elevator and we have a stairwell. On the left side, we are showing a ramp that goes down and slopes down to create access to the parking level in the rear. So this diagram, what I plan on doing is hiding sort of some of the mechanical equipment and infrastructure underneath the top of the ramp. And so the ramp will go over that section and then come around 10%, loop around, and then create a parking spaces inside and under the building, as well as a couple of spaces outside. So there's an elevator access at this level, some bike storage, and there is a garbage room on this level. The owner does want to do a garbage chute in the building. I think just a garbage chute, and then recycling would be picked up separately. So the idea is that would be a neat way to sort of like keep the building neat and in control and not just have everyone dealing with their own garbage. So we have sort of thought about how we would handle that and what type of building the owners would like to operate. So you could see the garbage shaft and recycling areas sort of off to the side of the elevator. The next floor up has a series of apartment buildings. Every unit does have a balcony off of it, whether or not it's a balcony off of the front or a balcony off of the back. We felt it was important to provide a little bit of outdoor space to these units. Our proposal does call for 4 affordable units within this project. I believe we are required to only have 2, so we're having an additional 2 affordable units as part of this proposal. Okay, so, and then this would be the 4th floor, which is a rooftop. So on the rooftop, we have a smaller unit at the front, and then we have some patios off of the front, and then we have 2 sort of larger, nicer units off of the back, and they have stairways up to their own small private decks on the roof. Obviously, this has a tremendous view. And then we're also putting the mechanical equipment up on the roof that we will hide behind mechanical screening as well, sort of associated near the elevator shaft. This just shows some of the elevations, showing how we've broken up some of the forms and some of the massing, balconies, using some of the brick and step backs. So this is the rear elevation. So this is, obviously part of the conversation that we're having. We understand that this is, so currently I've drawn this, obviously you understand the building part, you see the ramp coming down, and then the access into the rear for the parking area. My original proposal called for using like a ready rock wall going around this whole thing. It would be a type of ready rock that has like a natural stone face. My original assumption that was probably the easiest solution and how to sort of create this roadway. But after discussions with the neighbors and just having some general discussions about the project, this is the project from the side. We're going to put some air conditioning condensers mounted to the side of the parking. We're going to have the parking structure generally be open for ventilation purposes. This is the other side of the project, just showing the ready rock wall and the ramp with the cantilevered structure. And then this is somewhat...
Ballpark, how tall would that wall be?
How tall?
Yeah, just ballpark.
I don't have that information in front of me, but let's just say it's tall.
It's like 20 feet at least?
Yeah, at least. So that's why part of the discussion and part of the things we want to discuss today is sort of this proposal, which is something that we had discussed briefly with our neighbors, which is instead of making it a massive ready rock wall, basically just putting it up on steel columns and allowing nature to sort of come into it and sort of not creating a giant ready rock wall, but basically creating just up on concrete not really concrete, up on a steel frame, and that will allow us to have plants inside of it. It will allow us to sort of nature to come into it, and maybe that would be a more, just a different way to sort of deal with that versus a giant ready rock wall. So I think part of just opening up that as a discussion standpoint, we just wanted to see if there's one preferable or less preferable. Is it, how do you deal with this condition? Just because this is a condition all along in that site. I mean, we have probably about a 15-foot drop off the street. So we're already a 15-foot drop off the street.
It's a challenging site.
Then we still go straight down to the community center. We would have loved to have that filled in with program, but it just doesn't seem possible. Economically, it doesn't make sense to do a vehicle elevator and add additional parking. The only thing that would make any sense is if we could somehow gain access through the Palisades Road in order to, have additional parking levels at that lower level, or bring units down to that level, which would also be a great
Is it
idea.
actually possible to get to the underside of this in Palisades from that?
Through the back of the community center, but no longer possible. So
Because,
they built a
Okay.
addition to it.
so, okay, I mean, okay. Well, you tell me when you're done, and then we can,
Well, this is basically sort of, how do you mitigate,
right, so,
how do you mitigate that?
How much space do you have between let's say you're still with the Ready Rock wall, how much space between that and the property line do you have to put screening?
Sorry. You could see it's about, we were planning, let me go back to the, now I keep trying to work on the screen there. Let me go back to the site plan. So we have probably about, 5 feet from the back of that wall to where we would have our fence. We'd have to have our fence, and we were planning on obviously landscaping that and putting trees in there. This section off to the right would remain natural. That's like this little flag area that sort of comes off to it. We would keep that natural. But we would landscape this whole Ready Rock wall. So technically, it would be covered with green. It would be covered with green. But, that's kind of why I was proposing possibly the other thing, because it just seems like if you had something up on a steel frame, maybe it would be lighter. Maybe it would let green inside of it. It would sort of create more dirt, more ground, more, less of like a solid form. So I just didn't know if there was any preference as far as the town goes, or.
My concern would be that it would just be dark and dirty under there.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's so high, it could have vegetation in it. I mean, it doesn't, it's not.
I think the other thing you got to consider with the driveway and the rear area, I didn't see any provisions for stormwater to pick up that lower rear area. Where are you going to go with it?
Yeah.
So you got to think about that too. Under this, some kind of stormwater detention.
Yeah.
Because you're well below the street level.
Yeah.
You're not getting back to the street.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any route through the community center property, or is a route stormwater?
I mean, possibly a pipe route is certainly different than a drivable driveway. I think a pipe could possibly
But
be.
you should think about that, because that's going to affect, what you do back here.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
to some extent.
Yes. The neighbor she owns the building next door. And so she was the one who was sort of saying, wouldn't it be nice to just sort of open it up? So that's why having the columns there, I think, would be preferable than having a massive stone wall. There may be some advantages either way, but.
yeah, so I guess, first of all, I really like this project. I like the architecture and everything else. I think it's not worth getting into too much of it tonight, because I think we're gonna have this joint session where we can talk about it more. But I know from talking to Michael Patino, who's an architect, who's also on the board of trustees and is our liaison, he's actually the one who suggested that we do the joint session. And I know that he raised a couple of issues with me. One of them relates to what we're talking about, the big wall in the back, which I say I prefer that to but it's sitting on columns. I guess the other possibility is whether or not that wall could somehow be stepped in such a way that it could accommodate a couple of tiers of planting as opposed to just being a sheer wall.
I mean, I am infinitely creative, so I could certainly create planters that come out of it. We could something that, it would be interesting in that effect, some type of like, wailing wall of Dobbs Ferry effect, we
But
could
do
have.
you actually do you have the room to actually step it?
I mean, that would be fairly tight, but because of the steep, because of the size of it, I believe we could, almost have it indented with planters. They could maybe sort of come in and still be an effective planter. We could come up with something that's interesting that doesn't have to come out. Maybe it comes in and creates some opportunities for plants. And maybe it's a combination. Like I said, maybe part of it adjacent to their house is open, and then part of it could be, sort of closed.
Because the part that is opened by the pilote, that doesn't actually help you. Help her, I don't think, because she's way above.
It's no, she is, and sorry, this is, but her building actually has units that come down. So
Okay.
she's one of the lucky ones who got her building done prior to all this stuff. So she has, I think, 2 or 3 levels down from the street, right? I'm not quite sure.
Because I know the other concern that, Mike, that we would talk about in the
Yeah.
workshop and shouldn't get into too much
Yeah.
depth here,
Yeah.
is the massing of the side and whether
Yeah.
there's some way to soften the 2 side elevations
Yeah.
vis-à-vis the neighbors.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should try to, I'm just
Yeah.
giving you that as a heads up so that
Yeah.
you know that when we do this workshop, those would be the 2 of the
Yeah.
biggest issues, the side elevations
Yeah.
and that rear wall.
So one of the things I just want to mention with the rear wall, when you mentioned the planters, I mean, part of the thing the board's gonna have to think about is like irrigation of those plants, right? Like, how do you water them and keep them
They're
alive
gonna
and
get
naturally?
blasted
Right.
by the, summer, late afternoon sun.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are all good. Yeah, those are all things to think about. I think the goal is to get the building and the architecture on Main Street is important to me, important to the client. And I think also just having the number of units is important to the client to make the project feasible, and also to the town. This is extremely close to the train station.
Oh, we love it. I mean, I love the project.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's really, I think it's more of these some of these massing issues that need to get worked out.
So, okay, well, I look forward to working through this process with you guys and trying to figure it out. I did try to break it up with some different materials on the side with some brick and then some stucco in the back. We could certainly look at some of that. If there's any other comments, but I think that's where we're at. So I will address some of the town comments and will, I guess, submit, and then you will let us know when you feel you'd like to have that joint session, or is that a public session or more of like a private workshop session?
Well, it has to be open to the public because there'll be a quorum, but they won't be speaking.
Okay.
But they can, as many people as want to watch.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds great.
good.
I also like to say this also, like our last project, this is downtown, it's near mass
Yep.
transit, that's where we like to create density, so,
Yep,
you certainly have my support in trying to get this going.
yep.
That would be great.
Is there a way if you put the driveway, so then our building next door, you can get access where you have a better slope down?
Which,
If you go from the right-hand side of
No, because it's 30 inch, you see how it's 30 inches higher up the building. So that's why it doesn't work, because it's up, so another 30 inches. So we're currently at code for 10% slope to come down. So that would be even more, that would be like, I don't even know what that slope would be. So that'd be even greater. So it doesn't,
Previously, I think it was discussed before.
yeah.
And
I also recommend that the fire department takes a look at this.
I think they did, or,
No, but I want them to take a look at it again, because there are clearly going to be some rear apartments that are not going to be accessible. So, like, they just have to feel comfortable with the fact that that's what they're designing. Based on the interior of the apartments.
Okay, it's good, Greg.
okay?
Yeah?
Well, thank you, guys. We'll look forward to the next meeting. You got it.
Greg,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is 81 Ogden Place West.
You guys have 82 on there.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's at the very, yeah.
There is some language change, yes.
You guys are discussing how much tax.
No, no.
Thank you. Have a good night. 81 Ogden, please. Bye-bye.
So who was it who didn't show? Which project got put on?
200 Ashford. 81 Ogden Place West, anybody here to speak to that? You're
Yes,
online?
can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm online. This is John Rapetti from Carroll Kurth Architects. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, John.
Hi, how are you? So I'm here representing our clients, Bill and Christine Moon. I'm also a local resident and friend of theirs, and we are proposing a new handicap accessible ramp and replace their rear deck for their son, Jacob Moon. I can share my screen if you'd like. So we had looked into doing a ramp to get into the front entry porch that exists, but we were trying to really avoid doing we have to go up 42 inches, so we would need 42 feet of switchback ramp in the front of the house. So alternately, we were hoping to do a ramp that led to the back porch. The grade goes down, so if we start toward the front of the house, we'd be able to turn and lead to the rear deck. This deck currently needs to be rebuilt anyway, so we thought we would enlarge it, and there's currently no access from the deck down to grade currently, so this would actually allow that. We would have been within the setbacks on the side, but there are meters and electrical panels that we need to maintain a 3-foot distance from. So by doing that, we're encroaching into the side yard setback, 1.5 feet. And then as far as the rear deck and rebuilding it, we were going to keep it at the same rear line, which is already within the setback, and just widening the length of it. One of the other reasons that we didn't want to do the switchback in the front of the house was that we thought aesthetically in the future it'd be better to redo it as a front porch and possibly do a mechanical lift, which would definitely be as a separate agenda, which would be more time and money. So this the ramp to the back of the house would be our immediate solution. I believe when we submitted to the building department, Dan and John they suggested we go to the planning board, or sent us to the planning board to request a waiver for the zoning variance in order to kind of expedite this. So maybe they can speak to that. Also, we did receive the engineer's report yesterday, so I'm more than happy to address that. I know there was a lot of stormwater questions because we were thinking of doing a rain escape system on the deck so that it's a usable space below. The total increase in impervious surface was about 220 square feet, including a pad at the beginning of the deck, this path, and the additional decking. So I'm happy to address stormwater management with the engineer as well.
Well, since this is a ADA issue, what do we need to do to expedite this project?
So I have an AHRB resolution approval if you'd like to decide not to require site plan approval. That doesn't mean that, like, Anthony had comments and they'd still have to address those as part of the building permit process, but they don't have to necessarily have to have a public hearing for a site plan if you decide to.
But it's also granting a waiver for the 1'5".
I didn't think they do need a zoning, because I don't think you can do that. They can't do that without, like, I think a public hearing on that. Because that's site plan. I mean, that's a, that's a variance.
Do you have to do site plan then?
Does it have to go to the ZBA?
Then it would have to go to the ZBA. I didn't realize.
Do you have to do that for a deck? Or a ramp?
It's a structure. Has to be within
You don't have to do it for athletic,
No,
you have to be within the setbacks with any.
No, you don't. You can run in athletics, you know, if you put a basketball court in, you can run it right up to the property line, I think.
Correct, like an asphalt
Yeah.
basketball court.
You know, with a big
This is
fence.
raised ramp, which is a deck,
Yeah, it is.
right? Because at the end, if you see, it's like a 5-foot circle to meet ADA requirement.
Right.
So that's in the setback.
All right, well, what's the best way to get them there?
I guess call for a public hearing next month.
And what about the variance?
Well, then you can give a waiver.
We can waive it?
So you technically have a provision in your code that allows for the board to waive area, certain, like, bulk regulations.
Oh, okay. So, and if we call for a public hearing, if the neighbor has an issue, they can come and let us know.
Okay, so let's do that.
Okay. So I move that we call for a public hearing for next month. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, Anthony, you need some things answered?
Yeah, I'm sure they can address it, and there may be ways to minimize the stormwater requirements, you know, if, 'cause there is a patio existing back there at grade, which is impervious.
Correct.
For instance, if you limited the rainwater system to be just above that patio, you wouldn't be increasing impervious area, you know, and left the rest of the deck to just flow through. That would be a way, you know, but if you want, you know, if you do want to capture all that rainwater, you'll have to do something.
Okay, what is the threshold of additional impervious surface that
I think it's
requires
pretty
that?
low. I think it's like 100
square feet?
Yeah.
100 square feet? Okay, so if we're within that, we can,
Right.
we can work with it. Okay, yeah, we're definitely open to modifying it in order to make it most efficient and expeditious way possible.
Well, we'd like to get you going as quickly as possible, so if you can coordinate
Right.
with Anthony and make sure that all those issues are resolved by our next meeting, then we'll try and.
And the only other thing I'll just mention is like the plan talked about a future lift in the front and a future porch. Like either put it in or don't. I don't know that the board can approve it as a future thing without detail.
Yeah, no, we weren't looking for approval on that now. We were just kind of noting the reasoning of why we didn't do the switch back in the front.
Right.
Okay.
More for aesthetics, but yeah, well, that would be a
Just
whole
make sure
separate.
that's off the plan.
Yeah, you
Okay.
admitted
That's
off the plan.
submitted for the next planning board meeting.
Yeah, I can revise that.
That plan.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a
Then
plan?
we don't need zoning.
It
Correct.
appears not, yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll have everything
Now, do
ready.
they have to
for the next
notice their neighbor?
But no call for public hearing, so Sarah will.
They'll
Okay.
have, they'll have to
notice,
notice.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
meeting. Okay,
See you next month.
thank you.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is 111 Wafergie Avenue, pre-submissions conference for the proposed 3-lot subdivision to include 2 proposed dwellings and 1 existing dwelling.
So if the board recalls, this received a preliminary plat approval, but what we had them do is you approved the plat, but then they were coming back for both site plan and final subdivision approval to try to streamline things. So the actual site plan and the AHRB portion was not really fully vetted and discussed before. So that's really where the.
Good evening.
Preliminary
Oh, sorry.
plat, you okay,
Yes.
but knowing that they were gonna come back for final plat, and then to take a look at the site plan and the AHRB component.
All right, do we have somebody to present this project?
Yes, I'm here, Nicholas Shariah from Hudson Engineering. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, I'm here representing Rockwell Construction, the applicants seeking approval for the 3-lot subdivision at 111 Lafergie with 2 new single-family homes and the existing dwelling to remain. Along with me tonight in person are Robert Sherwood, the landscape architect, and William Besharat, the architect for both new dwellings. The plans for each lot have not really changed much since our last meeting for the preliminary subdivision approval. I have reviewed the comment letters from engineering and planning, and we are working on having those comments addressed in our next submission. As far as the engineering comments, they're mostly some technical things we have to respond to, as well as a few typos I'll have to clean up. Planning, there were some general comments regarding the zoning table, dimensional requirements, and the necessity for the separate applications for each lot. So we'll be submitting that in the next submission, as well as the lighting plan that was requested. As far as the subdivision approval, we are working with the health department and getting the final subdivision plat approved, as well as the approval for the sanitary sewer main to service the 2 new homes. I believe we will need a will serve letter from the village to accompany our sewer main extension application with the health department. And tonight we are just looking for any feedback on the site plans, the landscaping, and the proposed buildings. If you guys need me to go over those site plans again, I can share my screen and we can get into it.
I have one, just a graphic question on the.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at the site plan for which lot? Lot 3 or? What are the gray zones at the ends of the, along the street between the right of way and, are those meant to indicate a drop curb or something? They correspond to the driveway on.
Construction entrance, stabilized construction entrance, maybe. Is that what you're looking at? No?
1 second. Is that for lot 2? What page are you on? Or are you looking at?
I am sorry.
C3?
LP-1.0, 1 of 1.
Is that the curb cuts?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Is that the apron for the?
Excuse me, Robert
Yeah,
Sherwood,
sure.
landscape architect for the project.
Sure.
It was kind of a CAD error on my part, on Nick's plan. He had the driveway shaded, and I
Oh, okay.
didn't take them off, and you can see one's actually askew. But it is basically the curb cut.
Okay.
The section that's out of the right-of-way,
Okay,
in the right-of-way, excuse me.
okay.
Okay. Are you guys able to see my screen, my plans here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Seeing one? Okay. So this is the existing conditions for Lot 2. Obviously, the lot is undeveloped. There are a lot of trees on the site. We're proposing to remove these ones marked here in a section of the existing driveway that allows access to the existing house on 111 Lafergie. There'll be a new curb cut there'll be two new curb cuts servicing each lot, one for lot 2 and one for lot 3. So we'll go to the next page on C-3. We're proposing asphalt driveway here with a turnaround in the front yard with a stone walkway and a patio in the rear yard. In the side yard here, we have the stormwater system we have designed for the 100-year storm. We're proposing the water service to go out to the main on Lafergie Avenue, and the sanitary sewer service will go out to the right-of-way on Belden Avenue, where we'll be placing a new manhole which connects to the sewer service on Cricket and Lafergie. Let's see here. I'll take you to lot number 3. 1 second. Lot number 3 is the lot or proposed lot in the rear yard. It's going to be a flag lot. The flag portion starts on Lafergie, goes all the way to the rear of the lot. We're proposing another asphalt driveway, new curb cut with a turnaround the front yard. Again, this dwelling is a 5-bedroom dwelling with a wooden deck in the rear yard. And as you can see, the stormwater is again in the side yard. We're proposing a connection for the water service down the flag portion of the lot. And the sanitary sewer service will be in the side yard, connecting to a new manhole structure on Belden in the right of way, and then going down to that other manhole structure that will be on Lafergie, which then connects to the existing main on Cricket and Lafergie Avenue. I don't know if you guys have any questions regarding the site plan or layout of the utilities or stormwater. Otherwise, I can turn it over to the architect if you guys have any questions about the layout of the house.
Anyone?
I don't know.
I don't.
Okay, if you want to go and bring in the architect.
Sure. Will, are you there? I can put the plans up for you, Will. I'll start with lot 2, or do you have your own laptop there?
No, I don't have my own laptop. Please
Okay.
share on your screen.
No problem. Okay.
Introduce yourself.
William Besherat, representing the owner regarding this. I designed both houses for those lots. Okay, that's better. Can you share the house elevation? You know, with these two lots, they differ in size and area, so therefore each house was designed to fit within the requirements of lot coverage and FAR. We meet the requirements on it, but one lot is much larger than the other, so therefore we were able to get one house larger. You know, we're trying to maximize the home on those lots. We kept the characteristics of both houses to be similar, but different materials and different appeal. You look at them, they kind of match each other, but they're not identical. They're not like a development type of a house.
I think he needs you to share the architecture.
I'm asking, can you share the slide, please? I apologize about not bringing them. I thought they will be here, so it's my fault. I take responsibility for
I
that.
don't think he heard you.
Oh, no, I got it. I'm sharing.
Oh, there it
Well,
is.
can you see? Okay. This is for lot 2.
This is for lot 2. It's, you know, we proposing a stucco house with low pitch roofs on it to comply with the heights, what have you, and also to keep the house from looking McMansion type of a look, house, and to keep it like softer on the eye. And can you go to lot number 3?
Sure, 1 second.
Lot number 3, it's basically have also similar characteristics with the lower pitch roofs, but we gone with, instead of hip roofs, we gone with the gable ends roofs. I mean, we using siding instead of stucco. Generally speaking, the layouts of the house, they're kind of similar on the inside, but they differ in size, the number of bedrooms and the sizes of the bedrooms, etc. The material that we chose, in like windows and doors and garage doors, they're going to be similar on both houses to keep the harmony of the two houses because they're very close proximity to one another. Any other questions from the board, will be more than happy to answer. I think that will cover it. We chose, by the way, the colors also to be kind of soft colors on the outside to also be matching both houses.
And there are no, I guess in the first house, the existing house, there were steep slopes. It doesn't look like there are any steep slopes on these, on however we're defining steep slopes these days.
Exactly. I mean, these are not steep slopes like 10, 9 and 12, 10 and 12 and above. Generally speaking, in Dobbs Ferry, the majority of the new homes don't have the steep slopes on the roofs because of the height requirements and restrictions. And that kind of...
I think you meant steep slope land-wise, correct?
Yeah. I can speak to that. As far as steep slopes on a lot, what we've done is for lot number 3, the flag portion has a retaining wall that's a maximum of 4 feet in height that helps soften the grade once you get onto the subdivided lots. I can kind of show that on my site plan.
Okay. And although I can't imagine that there's an issue, have you done a set of the sky exposure plane envelope studies?
Yeah, there should be no issue with that.
Are they in here somewhere?
No, they're not.
All right, but
But
you've
we
checked it
can
out.
submit that. Yes, we checked that.
Okay,
Yeah, that was one of the comments we received. We'll provide that in the next submission.
okay.
So here, along the new property lines we're proposing for the first lot and lot number 3 in the flag portion, there is a retaining wall, goes from as low as 6 inches to about 4 feet right here in the middle, which helps kind of ease the grade between this lot and our new lots here. So we're keeping most of the grades on the new lots between 0 and 12%.
Yeah, they're pretty low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Rob, it looks like the front of the house is 2 stories and the rear of the house is 3 stories, so there is some slope there.
Yes, and towards the rear, absolutely. I can show that elevation though in the back so you guys can get a better idea of what it looks like. Oh, 1 second. So, this is the rear. The grade steps down here. That deck is kind of hovered over the final grade here in the back. There will be a walkout door under the deck. Is that correct, Will?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And there'll be some windows also. It'll be a walkout basement because of the grades, the nature of the property.
So Valerie, where are we with the subdivision? Do we just have to approve the final?
Yes, so you could call for a public hearing if you feel comfortable for both, for the site plan and the subdivision, and for next month's meeting, if you like.
Okay, now are there any site plan issues from your standpoint?
They already noted a couple of them that we asked for some additional information on. And then we also recommend that the village's landscape consultant review this. And I'll coordinate with John for them to get
Okay,
that.
good.
Okay, and Anthony, what about you?
We have a handful of comments that I mentioned they were looking at, so I don't see it as anything that would prevent public hearing.
Okay, so you guys feel like you can answer those questions by next month?
Nick?
Yes. Yes, I'm actually working on them tonight and into next week, so I'm confident we can meet the next deadline.
We can meet on our behalf, the
Okay.
plan review will be submitting that too.
So no one has a reason we can't call for a public hearing?
Valerie, just to be clear, the public hearing is just for the subdivision, right?
And site plan,
And site plan.
Site plan for the subdivision.
yes.
Well,
Or
for
for
lots
the
2 and
two
3.
For the two houses.
Site plan for
I thought we needed 3 applications total.
Yes, that was one of the comments. Just to be clear, I am so I'm going to split the applications. I wasn't quite clear on if I need to
They
submit a
submitted
separate
everything all at
application for
once.
each. Right.
Right, because they originally submitted everything all at once, like
Yeah.
for a site plan,
So
all on
we can
one
still call for a
application.
public hearing even though they don't have the applications in yet for the houses?
I don't, well, they technically have one application for everything.
Oh,
So similar to what we did with the
we just want them
Knoll.
to split it
We
because
just
we can't
split
give a CO on
That's right.
one.
Yeah, it's more administrative than anything. I mean, as long as Dan's okay
Okay.
with it.
All right. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So call for, do we have 2 addresses and a site plan, or just call for a single public hearing?
I think you just call for, we only have, right now, they only have one address, because they haven't.
For all 3 houses?
111.
Okay, well, I move that we call for a public hearing next month. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
See
you.
next month.
All right.
See you
Thank
next
you,
month.
guys. Have a good night.
Have a nice
Thanks.
good night.
All right, the last item on our agenda this evening is the ADU local law referral from the Village Board of Trustees.
So the village board wanted to expand where ADUs can be permitted. So they're specifically asking for ADUs to be permitted in the MDR1, MDR2, and MDRH zoning districts, but only if there is a single-family home, and that they would be in a separate principal building, specifically because those zoning districts already permit two-family homes. So it gets a little bit confusing as to what's a two-family versus ADU. And then also there starts becoming some additional building code requirements when you start dealing with, like, when it jumps up to like a three-family home. So anyhow, so this is, and the village board also understands that we're in the process of potentially updating the comprehensive plan, which will then ultimately have implementation of different zoning amendments. But this was to allow for potential property owners in these districts to apply for the Habitat for Humanity grant in order to get more ADUs.
And I also understand that it's, has to be, does it have to be in a separate existing structure?
It does not at this point.
Okay. It could,
Right.
it could be inside the principal structure.
No, it has
No.
to be in a separate structure, but it doesn't have to be existing.
Oh, okay.
It could be a new.
Good, okay.
And well, the language seemed pretty straight ahead to me. Anybody have any issues?
So, let me just clarify. So, if someone has a garage and they want to convert it into ADU, they can, if it's a single-family
If
home?
it's a single family, yeah.
Correct, okay. And what were the districts again? The MDR1, 2, and then, what was the other one?
MDRH, the MDR.
MDRH, okay.
These tend to be like, the classic street for this is, what's the one that's one over from Ashford Avenue? Between Gould
Maple?
Park and.
Maple?
Is it?
Washington?
Is it Washington? Where it's already a dense, mixed.
Oh, Maple, I think that is.
Maple, I think.
Maple,
Yeah.
I guess, where it's already a pretty dense
Yeah, it's got all those weird.
place, but it has all these garages.
Right.
On that south road, the dirt road behind.
Well, the
Well,
garages.
anyway.
The garages are the Ashford Avenue houses, right? And the garages are in the back.
Anyway, it's, no, I'm thinking of, Maple.
Yeah,
I think it's the one I'm thinking of.
yeah. 'Cause that one runs
where there are a lot of detached garages that could be potentially
yeah.
accessory dwelling units.
So what do you need from us? Just a
Blessing.
Yeah, blessing. If you have any comments, if not, I'll just let the board know that there's a positive recommendation.
okay. Do we need to vote on it?
If you'd like for the record, sure.
Okay. I move that we send this to the Board of Trustees with our approval. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
I also move that we adjourn the meeting. Do I have a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Second, and a second.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank